Welcome to another quiet night of wonder. Tonight, we journey through the sacred stories that shaped civilizations, from the creation hymns whispered in ancient Mesopotamia to the luminous tales of gods and heroes that echo across every culture. These are humanity's earliest attempts to understand the cosmos, to make meaning of existence, and to glimpse eternal truths hidden in the stars. Your voyage will be accompanied by soothing music and abstract imagery, gently uncovering little-known wonders and fascinating stories from across the ancient world. Let these timeless narratives feed your curiosity as you drift peacefully towards sleep. So take a deep breath now. Sink into the comfort that surrounds you and allow your mind and eyes to rest. The tale is beginning. In the cool darkness of a cave in what is now southern France, a human hand presses against stone. The hand is steady, guided by intention and imagination. Red ochre, carefully prepared from earth and minerals, leaves its mark on the limestone wall. The print remains there, a declaration across 40,000 years. I was here, I thought, I wondered. This simple gesture, repeated in caves across continents, represents something profound stirring in the human mind. Not just the ability to create images, but the capacity to think symbolically, to represent one thing with another, to tell stories about what might be rather than merely what is. The painted caves of Lascaux, Chauvet, and Altamira reveal minds at work doing more than recording the world around them. The animals depicted there, horses, bison, aurochs, and cave lions, appear in motion, their legs suggesting movement, their bodies overlapping in ways that create narrative sequences. These are not simple sketches, but compositions, carefully planned and executed in chambers deep within the earth, far from daylight, in spaces that required deliberate effort to reach. Archaeologists and cognitive scientists have long pondered why our ancestors ventured so far into darkness to create these images. The chambers were not living spaces. They were destination points, places requiring preparation, light sources, and determination to access. Something drew people deep into the earth to paint and engrave, to create images they could only view by flickering torchlight. Perhaps these dark chambers served as places where the boundary between the everyday world and something else grew thin. In the dancing shadows cast by animal fat lamps, static images would have appeared to move. The natural formations of the cave walls were incorporated into the artwork. A bulge in the stone becoming the shoulder of a bison, a crack suggesting a spear. The caves themselves became partners in storytelling. This impulse to create meaning through story appears to emerge alongside other distinctly human behaviors. The archaeological record shows that around the same time humans began creating representational art, they also began burying their dead with ceremony, adorning themselves with ornaments, and crafting objects with no apparent practical purpose beyond beauty or symbolism. Something fundamental was shifting in human consciousness. Our ancestors were developing the ability to think about thinking, to imagine scenarios that hadn't yet occurred, to conceive of time as a river flowing from past through present toward future. They were becoming aware of their own mortality and seeking ways to transcend it through memory and story. The human brain, having evolved to recognize patterns for survival, which plants are safe to eat, which animal tracks indicate prey or predator, began applying this pattern recognition ability to larger questions. Why does the sun disappear each night? Where does it go? What makes the rain fall or fail to fall? Why do some winters bring abundant game while others bring hunger? These questions had no obvious answers through observation alone. The sun's daily journey across the sky was visible to all, but its purpose and mechanism remained mysterious. Rain came from clouds, but what commanded the clouds? The seasons turned in their cycles, but why? Into these gaps in understanding, story flowed like water. Not random stories, but narratives that reflected the structure of human experience. The sun might journey across the sky as a human journeys across the land. The rain might fall or refuse to fall based on emotion or relationship, as human beings grant favors or withhold them. The world became populated with agency, with intention, with characters whose motivations could be understood through the lens of human psychology. This was not primitive or simple thinking. It was sophisticated metaphorical reasoning, the same cognitive ability that allows modern humans to understand complex concepts through analogy. When we speak of time as something we spend or save, we're using the same metaphorical thinking that led our ancestors to envision the sun as a traveler or the earth as a mother. The earliest mythological thinking also served crucial social functions. In small bands of hunter-gatherers, cooperation meant survival. Stories about origins, about proper behavior, about the relationship between humans and the natural world. These narratives created shared frameworks of meaning. They gave groups identity and cohesion. They explained not just how things came to be, but how things ought to be. Around fires at night, in the safety of temporary camps or more permanent settlements, stories would have been told and retold. Each telling might vary slightly, the teller adapting details for the specific audience or occasion, emphasizing different elements, adding flourishes. This oral tradition shaped stories through countless retellings, wearing away inconsistencies, strengthening memorable elements, creating narratives refined by generations of human response. The stories that survived this process weren't necessarily the most factually accurate. They were the most psychologically resonant, the ones that captured something true about human experience even when describing impossible events. A story about a great flood might preserve the memory of an actual catastrophe, but it survived because it spoke to universal fears of chaos and loss, and universal hopes for preservation and renewal. Language itself was evolving to accommodate this new kind of thinking. The subjunctive mood, the grammatical form for discussing things contrary to fact or not yet real, allowed humans to speak not just about what is, but about what might be, what should be, what once was, in a time before memory. The very structure of human language adapted to facilitate mythological thinking. As human societies grew more complex, transitioning from mobile hunter-gatherer bands to settled agricultural communities, the sophistication of their mythologies grew as well. The unpredictable bounty of wild foraging gave way to the anxious waiting of agriculture. Seeds planted in faith that rain would come, that seasons would turn as they should, that the pattern would hold for another year. These new concerns required new stories. Deities of weather and harvest became increasingly important. Myths began to explain not just the origin of the world, but the origin of agriculture itself, often as a gift from divine beings who taught humans how to plant and cultivate. The relationship between humans and these divine benefactors required maintenance through ritual, through offering, through the careful observance of proper behavior. By the time writing emerged in various civilizations, mythology had already been developing for tens of thousands of years through oral tradition. The first written myths we possess are not beginnings, but way stations, moments when stories already ancient were finally captured in lasting form. The clay tablets of Mesopotamia, the papyri of Egypt, the oracle bones of China. These preserve snapshots of living traditions, stretching back beyond the reach of writing, back to those first wandering humans pressing their hands against cave walls in the dancing torchlight, beginning the long human conversation about meaning, purpose, and the nature of existence. In those written myths, we would encounter the names and deeds of gods and heroes, but their roots lay deeper. In the first stories told around the first fires, when humanity began transforming the world into narrative. The great rivers flow as they have for millennia, carving their patient paths through the fertile plains between the Tigris and the Euphrates. In this cradle of civilization, where humanity first learned to cultivate grain and build cities of mud brick, the oldest written stories emerged from an imagination already ancient. The people of Sumer and Babylon looked at their world of unpredictable floods, scorching sun, and the eternal cycle of planting and harvest, and they created something remarkable, a mythology that would echo through all the civilizations that followed. In the beginning, according to the Mesopotamian tradition, there was not emptiness, but water. Not the waters we might imagine flowing in a river or filling a cup, but primordial waters of two distinct types. Apsu represented the fresh waters, sweet and calm, dwelling in the depths below. Tiamat embodied the salt waters, the fierce and churning seas. Between them, where fresh and salt mingled, the first gods came into being. This image of creation emerging from water made perfect sense to people whose very survival depended on the annual flooding of their rivers, whose fields only flourished when water mixed with earth. The Enuma Elish, written on clay tablets in careful cuneiform script, tells us how these early gods were born in pairs from the mingling waters. At first, there was only the sound of water, the movement of currents, the stillness before creation truly began. But as the younger gods emerged, they brought with them noise and activity. They moved and spoke and disturbed the ancient quiet. Apsu, desiring the return of silence, contemplated ending what had begun. Yet before he could act, the younger gods, protecting their own existence, moved first. From this primordial tension, the stage was set for a cosmos governed by younger, more active divine forces. Into this divine drama came Marduk, born of exceptional brightness and strength. When Tiamat, in her rage, created an army of creatures to challenge the younger gods, it was Marduk who stepped forward, but he asked a price for his protection: supremacy among all the gods. The others, facing Tiamat's fury, agreed. The story tells of Marduk's confrontation with the ancient water goddess, how he captured her in his net, how he used the winds as weapons. When Tiamat opened her mouth to swallow him, he drove the winds inside her, and from her divided form, he crafted the cosmos itself. Half of her became the sky above, half the earth below, or from her eyes flowed the Tigris and Euphrates, those life-giving rivers the Mesopotamians knew so well. This was not merely a story about distant, abstract forces. For the people who first pressed these words into clay, this mythology explained their entire world. The unpredictable flooding, the storms that could bring either blessing or destruction, the constant negotiation between chaos and order. All of it lived in these tales of gods born from water, of conflict giving rise to creation, of a world shaped from the body of the primordial sea itself. The pantheon that emerged reflected the complex society developing in these river valleys. At its heights stood Anu, the sky god, representing the dome of heaven itself. His very name meant sky in their language, and from his position he presided over the divine assembly, though often in a distant, authoritative way rather than direct involvement in daily affairs. Enlil, the god of wind and storms, held perhaps even greater practical power. It was Enlil who sent the winds that could scatter the clouds or bring devastating storms. He who could bless the harvest or withhold the rains. The Mesopotamians understood that survival meant respecting forces larger than themselves. Then there was Ishtar, known also as Inanna in the older Sumerian tradition, a goddess of fascinating complexity. She embodied both love and conflict, both fertility and the passionate destruction that desire could bring. Her story of descent to the underworld and return spoke to themes of renewal and transformation. As she passed through each of the 7 gates of the underworld, she removed a garment or ornament, arriving stripped of all power and protection. Yet she returned, and her return brought life back to the earth above. In a land where the seasons meant the difference between feast and famine, such stories of descent and renewal carried profound meaning. Ea, called Enki by the Sumerians, represented wisdom and the sweet waters beneath the earth. He was the patron of crafts and knowledge, the clever god who often helped humanity. When the gods decided to send a great flood to destroy noisy humankind, it was Ea who warned Utnapishtim, instructing him to build a boat and save himself, his family, and the animals. This flood story, preserved on clay tablets, predates similar narratives in other traditions and shows us how ancient peoples across Mesopotamia grappled with the devastating floods that periodically transformed their landscape. The Mesopotamian view of the divine was neither simply benevolent nor cruel. Their gods were powerful, sometimes capricious, demanding of respect and offerings. Humans, according to one creation account, were fashioned to relieve the gods of labor, to till the fields and maintain the temples. This reflected a society organized around temple complexes, where the gods were understood as landlords of sorts, and humans their tenant farmers. The relationship was reciprocal, but not equal. Humans provided service and worship, and in return hoped for protection and prosperity. What makes these Mesopotamian myths particularly significant is their position in history. These were among the very first stories committed to writing, pressed into clay, while the tablets were still wet, then baked hard to preserve them for millennia. When archaeologists in the 19th century began excavating the tells and mounds of Iraq, uncovering libraries of tablets, they discovered that literature itself began with mythology. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the Enuma Elish, the myths of Ishtar's descent. These were humanity's first written narratives, and they were stories of the gods. The influence of these Mesopotamian myths rippled outward across time and space as cultures encountered one another through trade, migration, and conquest. Stories traveled too. Elements of these ancient Babylonian and Sumerian tales can be traced in the later traditions of neighboring peoples, adapted and transformed, but carrying echoes of those original images: creation from water, great floods, descents to the underworld, the establishment of cosmic order from primordial chaos. As we prepare to journey westward to the banks of the Nile, we carry with us this understanding. Mythology began where civilization began, in the fertile valleys, where humans first built cities and temples, where they first developed writing to preserve their most important ideas. And what they chose to preserve first were not merely practical records, but stories of meaning, stories of origin, stories that connected their daily lives of planting and harvest to a vast cosmic drama in which gods shaped the world from ancient waters, just as the rivers shaped the land itself. As we journey westward from the land between two rivers, we arrive at another great civilization that emerged along a different waterway. The Nile, flowing northward through the desert landscape, brought life to a narrow ribbon of fertile land, and along its banks arose one of history's most enduring cultures. The ancient Egyptians developed a mythological framework as stable and eternal as the massive stone monuments they built, yet as cyclical and renewing as the river that sustained them. In the Egyptian understanding of the beginning, before earth and sky existed, there was only none, the infinite waters of primordial chaos. These waters were not turbulent or frightening, but rather dark, quiet, and full of potential. Within this endless ocean of possibility, something remarkable occurred. A mound of earth rose from the waters, the very first land to emerge from the formless deep. This Ben, as it was called, became the template for sacred architecture throughout Egyptian history, echoed in the shape of pyramids and commemorated in sacred stones. Upon this primordial mound stood Atum, whose name meant both the complete one and the not yet complete one, embodying the paradox of a being who was everything and nothing, finished and just beginning. Through an act of will and creative power, Atum began the process of bringing forth the cosmos. He created the first divine pair, Shu and Tefnut, representing air and moisture, the fundamental elements necessary for life to flourish in a desert land. From these first emanations came further generations of deities. Shu and Tefnut brought forth Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. In the Egyptian imagination, Nut arched over the world as a star-spangled woman, her body forming the dome of heaven, while Geb lay beneath, his body the fertile ground. Their father Shu stood between them, forever holding sky and earth in their proper positions, maintaining the separation that allowed the world to exist. This creation story from Heliopolis, the city of the sun, was only one of several Egyptian accounts of how the world began. In Memphis, the ancient capital, priests told of Ptah, who conceived the universe in his heart and brought it into being through the power of his word. This sophisticated concept suggested that thought and speech were creative forces, that the divine mind could imagine something and make it real through utterance. In distant Hermopolis, the story spoke of 8 primordial deities emerging from the waters, representing darkness, infinity, and hiddenness, who together generated the cosmic egg from which the sun was born. What united these various creation traditions was the Egyptian concept of Ma'at, perhaps their most profound contribution to human thought about cosmic order. Ma'at was both a goddess and a principle, representing truth, justice, harmony, and balance. She was the fundamental order that allowed the universe to function, the opposite of Isfet, which meant chaos and disorder. The entire cosmos operated according to Ma'at, and when this balance was maintained, the world flourished. Each day, the sun deity Ra demonstrated this eternal order through his journey across the sky. The Egyptians watched the sun rise in the east, travel overhead in its daily course, and set in the west. And they understood this not merely as a natural phenomenon, but as a divine journey of renewal. Ra sailed across the heavens in his solar bark, a celestial boat that carried him from horizon to horizon. The journey represented life, light, and the triumph of order over chaos. As evening approached and Ra descended into the western horizon, he began a different voyage, one through the mysterious realm of night. The Egyptians believed he traveled through the Duat, the underworld, encountering challenges and confronting the forces of disorder. Yet each dawn, Ra emerged victorious, reborn and renewed, bringing light once more to the world. This daily cycle offered profound reassurance about the nature of existence, suggesting that renewal always followed darkness, that order ultimately prevailed. The Nile itself embodied this principle of cyclical renewal. Each year, with remarkable reliability, the river would rise, flooding the surrounding fields and depositing rich, dark silt across the land. When the waters receded, they left behind renewed earth, ready for planting. The Egyptians saw in this annual inundation the same pattern that governed the cosmos, the eternal rhythm of death and rebirth, depletion and restoration. This understanding of time as cyclical rather than linear shaped Egyptian civilization profoundly. While other cultures might see history as a progression from beginning to end, the Egyptians perceived time as an eternal return, an endless repetition of established patterns. The same festivals recurred each year, the same rituals were performed, the same order maintained. Even their monumental architecture expressed this desire for permanence within the cycle, creating structures that would endure through countless repetitions of the seasons. The gods themselves reflected different aspects of this ordered cosmos. Thoth, depicted with the head of an ibis, governed wisdom, writing, and the measurement of time. He was said to have created the calendar and maintained the records of Ma'at. Hathor embodied joy, music, and motherhood, her countenance friendly and welcoming. Sobek, appearing as a crocodile or crocodile-headed man, represented the power of the Nile and the pharaoh's might. Each deity had a role, a sphere of influence, a way of maintaining the cosmic balance. The pharaoh himself stood at the intersection of human and divine worlds. He was considered the living Horus, the sky deity who appeared as a falcon. And upon his passing, he became one with Osiris. As the mediator between the gods and humanity, the pharaoh's primary responsibility was to maintain Ma'at throughout the land. Through proper rituals, just governance, and the construction of temples, he ensured that Egypt remained in harmony with the divine order. Temples throughout Egypt served as houses for the gods, places where the divine and earthly realms touched. Their walls were covered with hieroglyphs and images that told the old stories, preserved the ancient wisdom, and reinforced the eternal patterns. Priests performed daily rituals to honor the deities, presenting offerings and reciting prayers that had been spoken for generations. These sacred spaces were microcosms of creation itself, oriented according to celestial patterns, built to mirror the order of the universe. The Egyptian understanding of multiplicity within unity allowed them to hold seemingly contradictory ideas simultaneously. Ra could merge with other deities to become Ra-Horakhti or Amun-Ra, combining different aspects of solar divinity. Local gods maintained their importance even as great cosmic deities rose to prominence. This fluid approach to the divine reflected a sophisticated understanding that ultimate truth might be too vast for any single expression, that the sacred could be approached from many directions. As we rest here beside the Nile, watching the sun set over the western desert, we can almost hear the ancient hymns rising from the temple courtyards, smell the incense burning before sacred images, and sense the profound peace that came from believing in an ordered, knowable universe. The Egyptian gift to human mythology was this vision of cosmos over chaos, this faith that beneath the surface of daily life ran deep patterns of meaning and purpose, renewable and eternal as the river itself. The great river valley of the Nile had given birth to a civilization unlike any other, and with it came stories that would captivate the human imagination for thousands of years. Among all the deities that populated the Egyptian pantheon, none held a more central place in the hearts of the people than Osiris, the god who experienced the ultimate transformation. His story, intertwined with that of his devoted sister wife Isis, became the foundation for Egyptian beliefs about what lay beyond the horizon of mortal life. In the time when gods still walked upon the earth, Osiris was said to have ruled as a benevolent king, teaching humanity the arts of agriculture and civilization. He showed people how to cultivate the black soil left by the Nile's floods, how to grow barley and emmer wheat, and how to live together in harmony under the principle of Ma'at. The ancient texts describe him as a wise and gentle ruler, beloved by those he governed. His very presence brought abundance to the land, much as the river brought its life-giving waters each year. The story tells us that Osiris possessed a sister of remarkable devotion, the goddess Isis, whose wisdom and magical knowledge surpassed that of nearly all other deities. Their bond represented an ideal of partnership and loyalty that the ancient Egyptians held dear. When circumstances led to Osiris's time of ruling the living coming to an end, it was Isis who would not accept that this represented a final conclusion. Her determination to restore what had been lost would become one of mythology's great tales of love and persistence. The narrative describes how Isis searched the length and breadth of Egypt, traveling through marshlands and across deserts, never wavering in her purpose. The ancient storytellers spoke of how she took the form of a bird, crying out in lamentation as she flew above the papyrus swamps. Her quest took her to the distant city of Byblos on the Phoenician coast, where a magnificent tamarisk tree had grown with supernatural speed. Every element of the story carried symbolic weight for those who heard it. The tree representing the connection between earth and sky, between life and what comes after. When Isis succeeded in her quest and returned to Egypt, she hid what she had found among the papyrus reeds of the delta. But the story was not yet complete. Through powerful magic and the assistance of other deities, Isis performed rituals that would change the nature of existence itself. She sought help from her sister, Nephthys, and together they called upon the forces of transformation. The god Anubis, who would later become the guide of souls, participated in the sacred rites, wrapping Osiris in linen and performing the ceremonies that would preserve him for eternity. Through these divine actions, Osiris was transformed into something new. He became the ruler of a realm that existed beyond the visible world, a green-skinned lord of regeneration who sat in judgment in the Hall of Two Truths. The ancient Egyptians depicted him wrapped in white linen, holding the crook and flail that symbolized his kingship, wearing the Atef crown with its distinctive feathers. His resurrection was not a return to his former state, but an evolution into a new form of existence, one that offered hope to all who would follow. The Egyptian understanding of what happened after life drew heavily from this mythological framework. They believed that Osiris had opened a path that others might follow, that the transformation he underwent was not unique to the divine realm, but accessible to humanity as well. Every person who passed from the world of the living was associated with Osiris, their name preceded by his in funerary texts. They would journey to his hall, where their heart would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at on a great scale, with Anubis overseeing the process and Thoth recording the result. This mythology gave the ancient Egyptians a remarkably optimistic view of what lay beyond mortal life. Unlike many cultures that imagined a shadowy, diminished existence after departure from the living world, the Egyptians envisioned a realm called the Field of Reeds, where the justified would live in peace and plenty. There they would enjoy all the pleasures they had known in life: farming fertile lands, sailing in boats, and reuniting with loved ones who had gone before. The fields were always green, the harvest always abundant, and the sun always shone in a perfect blue sky. The role of Isis in this mythology extended beyond her actions in the central story. She became known as a great magician and protector, a mother goddess who watched over her followers with fierce devotion. The ancient Egyptians called upon her in times of need, believing she understood suffering and loss from her own experience. Her cult spread far beyond Egypt's borders in later centuries, reaching Greece and Rome, where temples were built in her honor and mysteries celebrated in her name. She represented the power of love to overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. Other deities played their parts in this cosmic drama of renewal and continuation. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom and writing, served as scribe and mediator. His knowledge of words and magic essential to the proper functioning of the universe. Anubis, with his jackal head, became the psychopomp who guided souls through the dangerous pathways of the underworld, protecting them from threats they might encounter. Maat herself, the goddess who personified truth and order, stood at the very center of the judgment, her feather the measure against which all hearts were weighed. The annual flooding of the Nile became intimately connected with this mythology of renewal. Just as Osiris had been transformed and reborn, so too did the land experience its yearly death and resurrection. When the river rose and covered the fields with water, the Egyptians saw the tears of Isis mourning for her beloved. When the waters receded and green shoots emerged from the black mud, they witnessed Osiris's power of regeneration made manifest. The cycles of nature and the cycles of mythology reflected one another, each giving meaning to the other. This beautiful interweaving of myth and environment created a worldview that sustained Egyptian civilization for over 3,000 years. The promise that existence continued beyond the visible world, that consciousness persisted and relationships endured, gave comfort to generations who lived and worked in the Nile Valley. They built their grand monuments not from fear, but from hope, not as desperate attempts to avoid oblivion, but as confident preparations for the journey ahead. As we prepare to leave the temples and tombs of Egypt, carrying with us these stories of transformation and continuation, we turn our attention eastward, across the mountains and deserts, in the vast subcontinent of India. Other civilizations were developing their own sophisticated mythologies. There, the concepts of cycle and renewal would take on even grander dimensions, as we shall soon discover. As we journey eastward from the banks of the Nile, we arrive at the Indian subcontinent, where an entirely different vision of cosmic time unfolds. Here, in the ancient texts and oral traditions that would become Hinduism, we encounter a mythology so vast and intricate that it encompasses not merely one creation, but endless cycles of creation and dissolution stretching across incomprehensible spans of time. The earliest Hindu creation stories emerge from the Rig Veda, composed perhaps 3,500 years ago, though the traditions they contain are surely older still. In one of the most profound creation hymns, known as the Nasadiya Sukta, the ancient poets contemplated the very origin of existence with remarkable philosophical sophistication. They asked questions that still resonate today. What existed before creation? Was there being or non-being? The hymn suggests that before anything else, there was neither existence nor non-existence, neither death nor immortality, neither day nor night. In that primordial state, something breathed, windless by its own power. From that one, through heat and desire, the first seed of mind arose. What makes this ancient text so extraordinary is its humility. The hymn concludes by acknowledging that perhaps only the divine consciousness that surveys all from the highest heaven knows how creation came to be. Or perhaps it suggests gently, even that consciousness does not know. This willingness to embrace mystery, to hold space for the unknown, becomes a characteristic feature of Hindu mythological thinking. Another creation account speaks of cosmic waters, much like those we encountered in Mesopotamia and Egypt, but with a distinctly Indian flavor. From these primordial waters arose a golden egg, the Hiranyagarbha, floating alone in the vast emptiness. After a year of cosmic gestation, the egg split open, and from it emerged Brahma, the creator deity. From the two halves of the shell, heaven and earth were formed. Brahma then brought forth the rest of creation through the power of his thought and word. Yet this is only one strand in the rich tapestry of Hindu creation mythology. Another tradition speaks of Purusha, the cosmic person whose body became the entire universe. In a cosmic act of self-sacrifice, Purusha was divided, and from his various parts arose all of creation. The gods, the elements, the animals, and humanity itself. From his mind came the moon, from his eyes the sun, from his breath the wind. Even the social order was said to originate from this primordial being, though modern sensibilities might view such hierarchies differently than the ancients did. At the heart of Hindu cosmology lies a concept both simple and profound: Brahman, not to be confused with Brahma, the creator deity. Brahman represents the ultimate reality, the unchanging, infinite, eternal essence that underlies all existence. Brahman is beyond description, beyond form, beyond all qualities we might name, yet it is the ground of all being. Everything that exists is ultimately an expression of this singular divine reality. The individual soul, or Atman, is in essence identical with Brahman, though this truth may be veiled by illusion. From this abstract principle emerges what later traditions would call the Trimurti, a threefold expression of divine function. Brahma, the creator, brings worlds into being. Vishnu, the preserver, maintains cosmic order and harmony, intervening when necessary to restore balance. Shiva represents transformation and dissolution, clearing away the old so that new creation might occur. These are not three separate gods, but three aspects of the singular divine reality, three faces of the infinite. The Hindu conception of time itself differs dramatically from the linear progression familiar to many other traditions. Time in Hindu mythology is circular, or perhaps spiral, moving in vast cycles called kalpas. Each kalpa represents a day in the life of Brahma, and lasts for billions of human years. During this cosmic day, the universe comes into being, evolves through various ages, and eventually dissolves. Then comes Brahma's night, an equally long period of cosmic rest and non-manifestation. After this, creation begins anew. These cycles continue endlessly, without beginning or final conclusion. Within each kalpa, time is further divided into smaller cycles, called yugas, cosmic ages, that progress from an initial golden age of harmony and truth through successive periods of gradual decline. We are said to be living now in the Kali Yuga, the final and most challenging age, though even this will eventually conclude and give way to a new golden age, beginning the cycle once more. This vision of time as cyclical rather than linear profoundly shaped Indian thought, suggesting that all things return, that endings are always also beginnings, that nothing is truly permanent except the eternal reality underlying all these transformations. The mythology surrounding Vishnu reveals another distinctive feature of Hindu tradition: the concept of avatars, divine descents into the world. Whenever cosmic order is threatened, whenever darkness begins to overwhelm light, Vishnu takes form and enters the world to restore balance. These incarnations include forms both animal and human, from a fish who saves the first man from a great flood, to a boar who rescues the earth when it is dragged beneath the cosmic ocean, to the beloved figures of Rama and Krishna, whose stories would fill volumes and capture hearts across millennia. Shiva, meanwhile, appears in Hindu mythology as a figure of fascinating complexity. Often depicted in deep meditation on Mount Kailash, Shiva represents the ascetic ideal, the consciousness beyond worldly entanglement. Yet Shiva is also the cosmic dancer, Nataraja, whose dance maintains the rhythm of the universe, whose movements both destroy and create in an eternal cosmic performance. In one hand, he holds the drum whose beat marks time itself. In another, the fire of transformation. He dances within a ring of flames, trampling ignorance beneath his feet, while his serene face remains peaceful, untouched by the cosmic drama he simultaneously enacts. The goddess traditions add yet another dimension to this rich mythological landscape. Devi, the goddess, appears in many forms. As Saraswati, patroness of learning and the arts. As Lakshmi, embodiment of prosperity and fortune. As Parvati, the devoted partner of Shiva, and in more fierce aspects as Durga and Kali, powerful protectors who combat forces of chaos and disorder. The divine feminine in Hindu mythology is never merely passive or decorative, but represents active power and creative energy, Shakti, without which even the gods cannot act. These stories and concepts, emerging from the Indian subcontinent over thousands of years, represent a mythological vision of remarkable sophistication. They embrace paradox. The universe is both real and illusory, both eternal and constantly changing, both infinitely many and ultimately one. They hold together the cosmic and the intimate, the abstract philosophical principle and the beloved deity with whom devotees maintain personal relationships. As we rest with these ideas, we might notice how Hindu mythology offers a particular kind of comfort in its embrace of cycles, its assurance that all things pass and return, that destruction is never final, but always preparatory to new creation. In a cosmos measured in billions of years, stretching across endless cycles of manifestation and rest, individual troubles find a different perspective. Yet the tradition also insists on the profound importance of each moment, each action, each choice we make in this particular lifetime. From these vast cosmic visions, we will soon turn to one of humanity's greatest stories, an epic that explores what these grand mythological concepts mean for individual lives, for questions of duty and purpose, for the eternal conversation between human aspiration and divine wisdom. As we emerge from contemplating the vast cosmic cycles of Hindu thought, we find ourselves drawn into one of the greatest treasures these cycles have produced, the Mahabharata. This ancient epic stands as one of the longest poems ever composed by human hands, containing nearly 100,000 verses that have echoed through the centuries. To rest within its verses is to float upon an ocean of wisdom, where every wave carries a story, and every story carries a truth about the nature of existence. The Mahabharata arose from the oral traditions of ancient India, gradually taking shape over many generations before being committed to written form. Its composition is traditionally attributed to the sage Vyasa, who appears not only as the author, but also as a character within the epic itself, a reminder that the teller and the tale are woven from the same fabric. The very name Mahabharata means the great tale of the Bharata dynasty, and it traces the fortunes and conflicts of royal families whose struggles mirror the eternal tensions between duty and desire, righteousness and ambition, wisdom and passion. At the heart of this vast epic lies a moment of profound stillness amid the gathering storm of conflict. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, two great armies face one another, assembled for a war that will determine the fate of kingdoms. Among the warriors preparing for combat stands Arjuna, one of the greatest archers the world has known, a prince and hero whose skill with the bow has become legendary. Yet as he surveys the field and recognizes friends, teachers, and relatives arrayed on both sides of the impending conflict, his resolve falters. His hands tremble, his bow slips from his grasp, and he sinks down in his chariot, overwhelmed by the terrible weight of what is about to unfold. Beside him sits his charioteer, a figure of quiet composure and infinite patience. This charioteer is Krishna, who is simultaneously Arjuna's friend and counselor, and also an avatar of the god Vishnu, the preserver of cosmic order. In this moment of crisis, Krishna begins to speak, and his words form the Bhagavad Gita, the song of the divine, a philosophical dialogue that has guided seekers of wisdom for more than 2,000 years. The conversation between Krishna and Arjuna unfolds with gentle persistence, addressing fundamental questions about the nature of action, duty, and the self. Krishna explains to the troubled warrior that the true self the eternal essence within all beings, cannot be harmed by any weapon, cannot be burned by fire, nor dried by wind. This imperishable self simply is, existing beyond the temporary forms it inhabits. When we understand this truth, Krishna teaches, we can act in the world without being bound by attachment to the fruits of our actions. This concept of performing one's duty without attachment to outcomes became known as karma yoga, the path of selfless action. Krishna reveals to Arjuna that each person has their own dharma, their righteous duty or purpose that arises from their position in the web of existence. For Arjuna, born into the warrior class and trained from childhood in the arts of protection and justice, his dharma calls him to uphold righteousness through action, even when that action brings sorrow to his heart. To abandon his duty in this crucial moment would be to abandon himself and the cosmic order he is meant to serve. Yet Krishna offers more than stern commandments about duty. He reveals multiple paths by which humans may approach the divine. Beyond the path of action lies the path of knowledge, where wisdom and understanding illuminate the nature of reality. There is also the path of devotion, bhakti yoga, where love and surrender to the divine create a bridge between the human and the eternal. These paths are not mutually exclusive, but rather different streams flowing toward the same ocean, each suited to different temperaments and circumstances. In one of the most breathtaking moments of the entire epic, Krishna grants Arjuna a vision of his true cosmic form. Arjuna beholds the divine in all its infinite manifestations, containing all beings, all times, all worlds within a single vast consciousness. The vision is overwhelming in its beauty and terrible in its completeness, showing the divine as both creator and destroyer, the source from which all things emerge and to which all things return. Arjuna sees past, present, and future as one, and recognizes that the events unfolding on the battlefield are part of a pattern far larger than any individual will or choice. This vision transforms Arjuna's understanding. He sees that Krishna, his beloved friend and guide, is not separate from the ultimate reality, but rather its most accessible and loving face. The divine has chosen to appear in a form that Arjuna can know and trust, walking beside him as a companion even while encompassing the entire cosmos. This image of the divine as friend and teacher has resonated through the ages, offering comfort to countless seekers who yearn for a relationship with the sacred that feels both intimate and authentic. The Mahabharata extends far beyond this central dialogue, weaving together hundreds of stories within its vast narrative. There are tales of gambling and exile, of loyalty tested and wisdom earned through suffering. There are supernatural weapons and divine interventions, moments of nobility and instances of all too human weakness. The epic presents its characters in full complexity, showing how even the most righteous can stumble, and how wisdom often emerges from unexpected sources. The influence of the Mahabharata on Indian culture cannot be overstated. Its characters became models for contemplation. Its dilemmas, the subject of endless discussion and interpretation. The questions it raises about duty, about the nature of right action, when all choices seem to carry consequences, about how to live with integrity in a complex and often contradictory world. These questions have remained vital through every generation. The epic has been retold in countless regional languages, performed in village squares and royal courts, painted on temple walls, and whispered as bedtime stories. What makes the Mahabharata endure is not merely its grand scope or philosophical depth, but its profound humanity. It acknowledges that life presents us with impossible choices, that doing what is right may require us to act in ways that break our hearts, that wisdom comes not from avoiding difficulty, but from facing it with awareness and courage. Krishna's teachings to Arjuna offer not escape from the challenges of existence, but a way to meet them with equanimity and purpose. As we rest with these ancient verses, we find ourselves in the presence of a wisdom that has brought solace to countless minds across the centuries. The Mahabharata invites us to see our own struggles reflected in its timeless conflicts, our own questions echoed in Arjuna's doubts, our own longing for meaning answered in Krishna's patient explanations. In this vast epic, humanity created a mirror large enough to contain both the intimate whispers of the heart and the thunderous movements of cosmic destiny, reminding us that we are simultaneously small and infinite, temporary and eternal, bound by duty and free in understanding. We leave behind the philosophical depths of the Mahabharata and journey westward across ancient seas to the rocky shores and sun-drenched islands of Greece, where a different kind of mythology took root in the Mediterranean soil. Here, beneath olive trees and among marble cliffs, the Greeks developed stories that would echo through Western civilization for millennia to come. But before the familiar names of Zeus and Athena graced temples and inspired poets, there existed an earlier generation of divine beings, primordial forces, whose very existence shaped the cosmos itself. The ancient Greeks understood that all things must have a beginning, even the gods themselves. Their creation stories spoke of a time before time, when the universe existed in a state the Greeks called chaos. This was not chaos in our modern sense of disorder and confusion, but rather a vast emptiness, a yawning void where nothing yet existed in formed reality. Chaos was the first principle, the original state from which all else would emerge. It represented pure potential, the pregnant nothingness that preceded creation. From this primordial chaos came the first beings. Gaia emerged as the broad-breasted earth, the solid foundation upon which all life would eventually flourish. She was not merely a goddess, but the very substance of the world itself, the land and soil and stone. The Greeks saw the earth beneath their feet as a living, divine presence, and Gaia embodied this understanding. Alongside her came Tartarus, the deep abyss far beneath the earth's surface, and Eros, the force of attraction and generation that would allow creation to continue. These were not personalities in the way later gods would be, but rather fundamental cosmic principles given divine form. Gaia, in the generative power of those earliest times, brought forth Uranus, the starry sky. He spread above her, vast and encompassing, covering the earth like a celestial dome. Together, Gaia and Uranus represented the most fundamental pairing in Greek thought. Earth and sky, matter and space, the solid and the infinite. Their union would populate the cosmos with the next generation of divine beings. The children of Gaia and Uranus were the Titans, enormous beings of tremendous power, who represented forces of nature and cosmic principles. There were 12 original Titans, 6 male and 6 female. Among them were Oceanus, the great river that the Greeks believed encircled the entire world, and Tethys, goddess of fresh water. There was Hyperion, associated with light, and Thea, whose domain included sight and the shining blue of the sky. Themis represented divine law and order, while Mnemosyne embodied memory, that crucial faculty by which the past remains alive in the present. Perhaps the most significant of the Titans were Cronus and Rhea, for their story would bridge the primordial age with the era of the Olympians yet to come. Cronus was the youngest of the Titan brothers, but he possessed a boldness and ambition that set him apart. The ancient poets described him as having a curved, strategic mind, always planning and thinking ahead. Rhea, his sister and eventual consort, represented the flow of time and generation, the natural succession from one age to another. But the transition from the age of Uranus to the age of the Titans did not come peacefully. According to the myths preserved by the poet Hesiod in his Theogony, Uranus feared the power of his own offspring. Rather than allowing them to emerge into the light, he pushed them back down into Gaia's depths, causing her tremendous discomfort and pain. The earth groaned under this burden, and in her distress, she conceived a plan. She fashioned a great sickle from adamant, an unbreakable divine metal, and presented it to her children, asking which among them would be brave enough to act against their father. Only Cronus volunteered for this difficult task. When Uranus came again to cover Gaia, spreading himself across the earth as the night sky, Cronus was waiting. With the adamantine sickle, he struck his father, separating sky from earth in a decisive act that established a new order in the cosmos. Uranus withdrew upward, forever separated from Gaia, and the distance between earth and sky that we know today was established. From this act, Cronus became the ruler of the Titans, king of the cosmos, in this second generation of divine beings. Under Cronus's rule, the universe entered what Greek tradition remembered as a golden age. This was a time of abundance and ease, when the earth brought forth its fruits without need for hard labor, and living beings existed in harmony. Time itself flowed differently, without the harsh divisions and pressures that would characterize later ages. Cronus and Rhea together governed this peaceful epoch, and the Titans took their places as the organizing principles of the natural world. Yet even as Cronus ruled, the same pattern that had defined his rise to power began to repeat. He had learned from his father's fate that children could threaten a parent's rule. When Rhea began to bear children to Cronus, the Titan king took drastic measures to protect his position. As each child was born, Cronus swallowed them whole, imprisoning them in his own body where they could not challenge him. One by one, the children disappeared. First Hestia, then Demeter, then Hera, followed by Hades and Poseidon. Each time, Rhea's grief grew deeper, until finally she determined that her next child would not suffer this fate. When Rhea felt the time approaching for her sixth child to be born, she appealed to Gaia for help, just as Gaia had once sought aid from her own children. Together, they devised a plan. Rhea traveled to Crete, to a cave on Mount Dicte, where she gave birth in secret to a son named Zeus. There, the infant was hidden away and cared for by nymphs and protective spirits, fed on honey and the milk of a divine goat. Meanwhile, Rhea returned to Cronus and presented him with a stone wrapped in swaddling clothes. The Titan king, not looking closely, swallowed the stone, believing he had disposed of another potential threat. Zeus grew to maturity in secret, gaining strength and wisdom far from his father's watchful eye. The stage was being set for yet another transition, another shift in cosmic power. The age of the Titans, which had seemed eternal under Cronus's rule, was approaching its culmination. The patterns established in these earliest generations would repeat once more, but with a crucial difference that would finally break the cycle and establish a more lasting order. These primordial Greek myths reveal a cosmos coming to consciousness through successive generations, each building upon the last. The journey from formless chaos to the structured earth of Gaia, from the unity of earth and sky to their necessary separation, and from the rule of Titans to the approaching age of Olympians, showed the Greeks' understanding that the universe itself had a history, a development from simpler to more complex forms. As you drift towards sleep, let your mind rest on these ancient images of emergence and transformation, of vast beings shaping the very structure of reality in those distant times when the world itself was young. The great war between gods and titans had ended, and a new order now governed the cosmos from the heights of Mount Olympus. Where once the elder powers had ruled, a younger generation of immortals now held dominion over sky and earth, sea and underworld. This was the age of Zeus and his siblings, a time when the gods walked closer to humanity and shaped the destinies of mortals with divine whim and purpose. Zeus, who had overthrown his father Cronus, established himself as king of the gods, master of the bright sky and the storm clouds that gathered above mountain peaks. The ancient Greeks imagined him enthroned in a palace of clouds, his presence announced by the rolling thunder that echoed through valleys. He embodied sovereignty itself, the principle of order and justice that held the cosmos together, though the stories also revealed him as temperamental and passionate, as changeable as the weather he commanded. Beside Zeus stood his wife Hera, queen of the heavens, protector of marriage and the bonds that held families together. She represented the dignity of commitment and the sacred nature of vows, watching over weddings and births throughout the mortal world. The Greeks understood her as both majestic and proud, a goddess whose own marriage to Zeus was often troubled, reflecting perhaps the complexities they observed in human relationships. The sea fell under the dominion of Poseidon, Zeus's brother, who ruled the waters with his three-pronged trident. Sailors spoke his name with reverence and fear, knowing that their lives depended on his favor. He could calm the waves or whip them into fury, and the Greeks believed he also had power over earthquakes. The sudden trembling of the earth they called his footsteps. In their mythology, Poseidon was as deep and unpredictable as the ocean itself, capable of both generosity and terrible wrath. The realm beneath the earth belonged to Hades, another brother who governed the shadowy land where mortal souls journeyed after life ended. Though his domain was somber, Hades himself was not seen as malevolent, but rather as stern and just, maintaining the necessary boundary between life and what came after. The Greeks rarely spoke his name directly, preferring euphemisms, yet they understood his role as essential to the natural order of existence. Among Zeus's children, Athena held special prominence. Said to have emerged fully formed from her father's head, already wearing armor and possessing complete wisdom, she became the patron of Athens, embodying intelligence, strategic thinking, and the civilized arts. The Greeks saw her in the practiced skills of weavers, the strategies of generals, and the reasoned debates of philosophers. She represented the mind's power to create order from chaos, to solve problems through cleverness rather than force alone. Apollo, god of light and music, prophecy and healing, exemplified the Greek ideal of balanced excellence. At his sanctuary at Delphi, priestesses delivered cryptic prophecies that Greeks believed came directly from the god, guidance sought by kings and common people alike. Apollo represented clarity, reason, and artistic beauty, driving his golden chariot across the sky each day, bringing illumination to the world. His temples became centers of learning and culture, where the Greeks celebrated the refinement of human potential. His twin sister, Artemis, roamed the wild places, protector of young creatures and mistress of the hunt. She embodied the untamed aspects of nature, the forests and mountains that existed beyond human cultivation. Young women approaching marriage would honor Artemis, seeking her blessing as they transitioned from childhood to adult responsibilities. In her, the Greeks recognized both the nurturing and fierce aspects of the natural world. Hermes, the quicksilver messenger god, served as intermediary between divine and mortal realms, with winged sandals carrying him swiftly across distances. He delivered Zeus's commands and guided travelers on their journeys. The Greeks saw him as patron of communication, commerce, and all forms of exchange and boundary crossing. His cleverness and wit made him beloved in stories, a god who could move between worlds with ease and charm. Aphrodite, born from sea foam according to one tradition, governed love and beauty, desire and attraction. Her influence touched both gods and mortals, for the Greeks understood that love's power recognized no boundaries. She represented the force that drew beings together, the creative energy of connection and relationship. In honoring her, the Greeks acknowledged love's capacity to inspire and transform, to create both joy and complexity in equal measure. The forge belonged to Hephaestus, craftsman of the gods, who worked at his anvil, creating items of wonder and utility. Though the myths described him as physically different from the other Olympians, his skill was unmatched, and his creations were marvels of divine artistry. In Hephaestus, the Greeks honored the dignity of work, the value of technical skill, and the beauty that human hands could create through patience and mastery. Ares embodied the harsh realities of conflict, the brutal aspects of warfare that the Greeks knew well from their history of city-state rivalries. Unlike Athena's strategic wisdom in combat, Ares represented the raw chaos and bloodshed of battle itself. The myths often portrayed him less favorably than other Olympians, perhaps reflecting Greek ambivalence about war's necessity and cost. These deities, dwelling on cloud-wrapped Olympus, were imagined as a divine family, with all the complexity that implied. They quarreled and reconciled, formed alliances and nursed grudges, loved and competed with one another. The Greeks understood their gods as powerful beyond mortal comprehension, yet recognizably similar to humans in their emotions and motivations. What made Greek mythology particularly distinctive was this conception of divine involvement in human affairs. The gods took interest in mortal lives, sometimes helping their favorites, sometimes punishing those who offended them. This created a worldview where humans existed in constant relationship with the divine, where one's fortunes might change based on which deity took notice. The line between fate and free will became beautifully blurred as mortals made choices while gods influenced outcomes. The Greeks also developed the concept of hubris, excessive pride that challenged divine order. Their stories repeatedly explored what happened when mortals forgot their place, when they claimed too much, or aspired beyond appropriate limits. Yet these same stories celebrated human excellence and achievement, creating a delicate balance between honoring the gods and developing human potential. As night settles around us, and these ancient stories drift through our consciousness, we might reflect on how the Greeks used their mythology to explore every aspect of existence, creating gods who represented different facets of life and nature, different human qualities magnified to divine proportion. These were deities who made the cosmos feel both orderly and personal, governed by powers that could be understood even if they couldn't be controlled. The gods of Olympus had established their reign over the cosmos, bringing order to the heavens and the earth below. Yet the Greeks understood that divinity alone could not tell the complete story of existence. Between the immortal gods in their celestial palace and ordinary mortals toiling in fields and cities, there existed a special category of beings who bridged these two worlds. These were the heroes, individuals born of both divine and human parentage, who accomplished deeds that elevated them beyond the capabilities of common people while remaining fundamentally mortal in their nature. The hero represented something essential to the Greek imagination, the possibility that greatness could emerge from human struggle, that courage and cleverness might allow a person to achieve the seemingly impossible. Through their stories, the ancient Greeks explored what it meant to live nobly, to face challenges with determination, and to leave a legacy that would outlast one's brief time on Earth. Among the earliest of these legendary figures was Perseus, whose very birth reflected the complex relationships between gods and mortals. His mother Danae had been shut away in a bronze chamber by her father, who feared a prophecy that his grandson would one day replace him. Yet Zeus came to her as golden rain, and from this union Perseus was conceived. Cast out to sea with his mother in a wooden chest, Perseus survived through a combination of divine favor and human kindness, washing ashore on the island of Seriphus, where a fisherman took them in. Perseus grew to manhood knowing he was different, touched by divine heritage, yet raised among humble people. When the king of Seriphos desired to remove the young man, he sent Perseus on what seemed an impossible quest to bring back the head of Medusa, one of the Gorgons whose very gaze could turn living beings to stone. This was the pattern of the hero's journey, the challenge that would test every quality Perseus possessed. The gods provided aid, as they often did for their half-mortal children. Athena gave Perseus a polished shield, bright as a mirror, while Hermes contributed winged sandals that would carry him through the air. From mysterious sources, Perseus also received a special bag to carry his terrible prize and a cap of invisibility. Yet these gifts alone could not ensure success. Perseus would need to employ intelligence and courage in equal measure. The young hero first sought out the Graeae, ancient sisters who shared a single eye among them. By seizing this eye, at the moment they passed it from one to another, Perseus gained the leverage to learn the location of the Gorgons. When he finally approached Medusa, he relied on wit rather than strength. Looking only at her reflection in his polished shield, he was able to approach without meeting her fatal gaze. A swift stroke separated her head from her body, and Perseus placed it quickly in his magical bag. His journey home brought further adventures. Flying over distant lands, Perseus looked down to see a beautiful woman chained to a rock by the sea, left as an offering to a sea creature that had been terrorizing her kingdom. This was Andromeda, and Perseus felt stirred by both compassion and admiration. He descended and struck a bargain with her desperate parents. If he could defeat the creature, he would claim Andromeda as his bride. Using Medusa's head, he turned the beast to stone and won the hand of the princess, returning home with both his trophy and his bride. The Greeks told Perseus' story not merely for entertainment, but as an illustration of the heroic ideal. He demonstrated cleverness in addition to bravery, showed mercy and compassion, and honored his family obligations. Through divine assistance and human excellence working together, the impossible became possible. Another hero whose deeds captured the Greek imagination was Theseus, the great king of Athens. Like Perseus, Theseus had both mortal and divine heritage, though his early life was spent proving himself worthy of his father's name. In his youth, rather than traveling to Athens by the safe sea route, Theseus chose the dangerous coastal road, deliberately seeking out the bandits and monsters who terrorized travelers along that path. Each of these encounters tested different aspects of Theseus's character. He defeated those who preyed upon the weak, often turning their own methods against them in a kind of poetic justice. By the time he reached Athens and claimed his birthright as the king's son, Theseus had already established himself as a champion of civilization against chaos, of order against violence. His most famous adventure involved the Minotaur, a creature half human and half bull that dwelt in an elaborate labyrinth beneath the palace of King Minos in Crete. Athens had been forced to send young people as tribute to be devoured by this monster, and Theseus volunteered to be among them, determined to end this terrible practice. In Crete, he won the love of the king's daughter, Ariadne, who provided him with a ball of thread to mark his path through the maze. Theseus ventured into the labyrinth, confronted the Minotaur, and emerged victorious, following the thread back to freedom and leading the other Athenians to safety. The story of Theseus illustrated the hero as civilizer and founder, the one who makes the world safer for others. His adventures transformed wild and dangerous places into realms where people could live without constant fear. As king of Athens, he was credited with unifying the scattered communities of Attica and establishing the democratic institutions that would make Athens famous. Yet no hero captured the Greek imagination quite like Heracles, known for his tremendous strength and his 12 labors. Born to Zeus and a mortal woman, Heracles possessed physical might beyond any ordinary person, but his life was marked by both glory and suffering. The Greeks saw in Heracles a figure who achieved immortality not simply through divine favor, but through endurance and perseverance, through seemingly endless challenges. The 12 labors themselves formed a catalogue of impossibilities overcome, slaying the invulnerable Nemean lion and bringing back its pelt as proof, destroying the many-headed hydra whose heads grew back when cut, capturing the swift Ceryneian hind without harming it, cleaning the Augean stables that had never been cleaned, and obtaining the girdle of the Amazon queen. Each task required not just strength, but ingenuity, whether redirecting rivers to wash away filth or using the environment itself as a weapon. Heracles traveled to the edges of the known world in his labors, retrieving the cattle of Geryon from the far west and descending into the underworld itself to bring back Cerberus, the three-headed guardian dog. Through these journeys, Heracles expanded the boundaries of the possible and demonstrated that perseverance could overcome any obstacle, no matter how daunting. These hero tales served multiple purposes in Greek culture. They entertained, certainly, but they also educated, providing models of behavior and illustrating values the society held dear. Heroes showed courage in the face of danger, but also intelligence, self-control, and respect for the gods. They protected the weak, founded cities, and made the world more orderly and safe. Their mortal nature meant they could fail, could suffer, could die, making their achievements all the more meaningful. Through their stories, the Greeks explored the heights of human potential while acknowledging human limitations, creating narratives that would echo through the centuries and influence countless generations to come. The heroes of Greece had proven themselves through impossible labors and legendary quests, establishing their places in the tapestry of myth. Yet there remained one story that would eclipse all others in scope and consequence, a tale that would be told and retold for millennia, inspiring poets and dreamers across countless generations. This was the story of Troy, a conflict that began with a simple golden apple and ended with the fall of an entire civilization. The tale begins, as so many Greek myths do, at a wedding. When the sea nymph Thetis married the mortal Peleus, all the gods were invited to celebrate, save one. Eris, the goddess of discord, arrived uninvited and rolled a golden apple into the festivities. Upon it were inscribed the words, "For the fairest." 3 goddesses immediately claimed it as their own. Hera, queen of the gods; Athena, goddess of wisdom; and Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. Unable to settle the dispute themselves, they sought a judge, and Zeus, wisely avoiding the decision, appointed a young Trojan prince named Paris to choose. Each goddess offered Paris a bribe for her selection. Hera promised him power over all of Europe and Asia. Athena offered wisdom and skill in warfare. Aphrodite, understanding the heart of a young man, offered him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chose Aphrodite, setting in motion events that would shake the foundations of both divine and mortal realms. The most beautiful woman in the world was Helen, wife of Menelaus, king of Sparta. When Paris visited Sparta on a diplomatic mission, Aphrodite ensured that Helen and Paris fell deeply in love. Whether Helen went willingly to Troy or was taken against her will has been debated since ancient times, but the result was the same. Her departure from Sparta sparked outrage throughout Greece. Menelaus called upon all the Greek kingdoms to honor an oath they had sworn years before, when Helen's many suitors had agreed to defend her chosen husband against any who might wrong him. Kings and heroes from across Greece assembled a massive fleet. Among them came Agamemnon, Menelaus's brother and the most powerful king in Greece, who assumed command of the expedition. There was cunning Odysseus, king of Ithaca, who had tried to avoid the war by feigning madness, but was discovered and bound by his oath. There was mighty Ajax, towering and strong, and Diomedes, fierce in combat. And there was Achilles, greatest of all Greek warriors, son of Thetis, and destined for glory. The Greek fleet sailed to Troy, that wealthy city on the coast of Asia Minor, and laid siege to its mighty walls. The Trojans, led by King Priam and his sons, refused to surrender Helen. Chief among Troy's defenders was Hector, Priam's eldest son, a warrior whose nobility and devotion to his city would make him beloved even by those who told his story in later ages. The siege lasted 10 long years, during which countless battles were fought beneath the walls of Troy. The conflict became more than a quest to reclaim Helen. It became a proving ground for heroes, a stage where mortal valor could be displayed before the watching gods. The deities themselves took sides, with Aphrodite, Apollo, and Ares supporting the Trojans, while Hera, Athena, and Poseidon favored the Greeks. They intervened in battles, saved their favorites, and pursued their own grievances through mortal conflict. The Iliad, Homer's magnificent epic, captures but a small portion of this decade-long struggle, focusing on a few crucial weeks in the war's final year. It centers on the wrath of Achilles, the greatest of Greek warriors, who withdrew from battle after a dispute with Agamemnon over honor and prizes of war. Without Achilles, the Greeks began to lose ground. The Trojans, led by Hector, drove the Greeks back to their ships and threatened to burn the entire fleet. Only when Achilles' beloved companion, Patroclus, was slain by Hector did the hero return to battle, consumed by grief and rage. The duel between Achilles and Hector stands as one of mythology's most poignant moments. Hector, knowing he faced a superior warrior, nevertheless stood his ground to defend his city. Their combat ended with Hector's demise, and Achilles' treatment of his fallen enemy showed how grief had transformed the hero. though he would eventually return the body to Priam in a moment of shared humanity that reminds us of the compassion that can exist even in conflict. Yet Achilles himself was fated not to see his home again. Paris, guided by Apollo, struck him in his one vulnerable spot, the heel by which his mother had held him when she dipped him in the river Styx as a child. The greatest warrior of his generation fell to a single arrow, reminding all that even the mightiest heroes remain mortal. Still, Troy's walls stood firm. The Greeks had lost their champion, and the war seemed destined to continue indefinitely. It was then that Odysseus, wisest of the Greeks, conceived of a stratagem that would end the conflict through cleverness rather than strength. The Greeks constructed an enormous wooden horse, hollow inside and large enough to hold a contingent of warriors. They left this monument on the beach with an inscription dedicating it to Athena, then sailed their ships away, hiding just beyond the horizon. The Trojans, believing the Greeks had finally abandoned their siege, debated what to do with the mysterious offering. Laocoon, a Trojan priest, warned against bringing it inside the city, speaking words that would echo through history. "I fear Greeks even bearing gifts." Yet other omens convinced the Trojans that the horse was indeed a sacred object, and they pulled it through their gates in celebration. That night, as Troy slept in victorious revelry, the Greek warriors hidden inside the horse emerged and opened the city gates. The Greek fleet had returned under cover of darkness, and now the entire army poured into the city. Troy, unconquered for 10 years, fell in a single night. The great city burned, its treasures were taken, and its people scattered across the Mediterranean world. The story of Troy resonated through Greek culture because it contained so many elements that spoke to their understanding of life. It showed how small actions, like Paris's judgment, could lead to enormous consequences. It demonstrated that even the greatest heroes were subject to fate and mortality. It revealed both the glory and the tragedy of warfare, the honor of defenders like Hector, and the grief of losses like Achilles. For Odysseus, the architect of Troy's fall, the victory was only the beginning of another journey. His 10-year voyage home to Ithaca would become another epic in itself. For Aeneas, a Trojan prince who escaped the burning city, the fall of Troy would mark the start of a voyage that Roman poets would later claim founded their own civilization. The Trojan Cycle of myths gave ancient audiences everything they sought in story: love and loss, honor and deception, the interaction of gods and mortals, the testing of heroes, and the reminder that all things, even mighty Troy, must eventually pass. These stories, preserved by Homer and countless other poets, continue to speak across the centuries, their characters as vivid now as when they were first sung in firelit halls. As we leave the ruins of Troy behind, our journey through mythology continues northward, to the mist-shrouded forests and cold mountains, where a different people told stories of their own gods and heroes beneath vast northern skies. As we leave behind the sun-warmed shores of the Mediterranean and the tales of Troy, our journey takes us northward, where cold winds blow across forests of pine and birch, where glaciers carve valleys from ancient stone, and where the aurora borealis dances across winter skies. Here, in the lands of Scandinavia and the Germanic peoples, a different vision of the cosmos emerged, one shaped by long winters and the fierce beauty of the northern world. The Norse people saw the universe not as a dome or a series of layers, but as a great tree. Yggdrasil, the world tree, stood at the center of all existence, its branches reaching into the heavens and its roots delving deep into mysterious realms below. This was no ordinary tree, but an immense ash evergreen and alive, connecting 9 distinct worlds in its vast framework. To understand Norse mythology is to understand this tree, for it represents the interconnectedness of all things, the way every realm touches and influences the others. In the highest branches dwelled Asgard, home of the Aesir, the primary family of Norse gods. Here, golden halls gleamed in the northern light, and a rainbow bridge called Bifrost connected this divine realm to Midgard, the middle enclosure where humans made their homes. Below the surface world lay still other realms, including Niflheim, a place of ice and mist, and the roots of Yggdrasil reached down to well springs of ancient wisdom. The tree itself was tended and threatened in equal measure. A great eagle perched in its highest branches, surveying all the worlds. A squirrel named Ratatos scurried up and down the trunk, carrying messages and, it must be said, spreading gossip between the eagle above and the serpent that gnawed at the roots below. 4 stags wandered among the branches, nibbling at the leaves. The tree endured these trials, renewing itself constantly, a symbol of resilience in the face of persistent challenges. At the head of the Norse pantheon stood Odin, a deity unlike the ruling gods of other mythologies we have encountered. Where Zeus wielded thunderbolts and demanded tribute, Odin sought wisdom above all else. This All-Father, as he was known, had sacrificed one of his own eyes to drink from Mimir's well, a spring of wisdom that bubbled up beneath one of Yggdrasil's roots. The price was steep, but to Odin, knowledge was worth any cost. The myths tell us he also hung from the world tree itself for 9 nights, pierced by a spear, in order to gain understanding of the runes, the magical symbols that held power over fate and reality. This image of a god who suffered willingly for wisdom reveals something essential about Norse mythology. Unlike many other traditions where gods remain distant and invulnerable, the Norse deities faced genuine struggle and limitation. They were powerful, yes, but not all-powerful. They were long-lived, but not truly immortal. They maintained their vigor by eating golden apples tended by the goddess Idun, and without these fruits, even the gods would age and weaken. Odin wandered the worlds in disguise, wearing a broad-brimmed hat and a cloak of blue or grey, accompanied by 2 ravens who brought him news. Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, flew across the realms each day and returned to whisper in their master's ears. These ravens represented Odin's reach and his perpetual quest for information. For in Norse belief, knowledge of events to come could help one prepare, even if fate could not ultimately be changed. Beside Odin, in importance, stood his son Thor, perhaps the most beloved of Norse deities. where Odin represented wisdom, poetry, and the mysterious arts. Thor embodied strength, protection, and straightforward courage. He carried Mjolnir, a hammer so powerful it could level mountains, yet so precisely balanced it always returned to his hand when thrown. Thor rode across the sky in a chariot pulled by 2 goats, and the sound of thunder was understood as the rumbling of his chariot wheels across the clouds. Thor's role was as defender, particularly against the giants who lived in the realm of Jotunheim. These giants represented the forces of chaos and wilderness that perpetually threatened the ordered worlds of gods and humans. The relationship between the Aesir and the giants was complex, marked by both conflict and occasional cooperation. And indeed, many gods had giant ancestry in their lineage. Thor's encounters with giants formed some of the most popular tales in Norse tradition, stories that mixed adventure with humor. For Thor, though mighty, could be tricked and outwitted by clever opponents. The goddess Freya brought a different dimension to the Norse divine realm. Beautiful and powerful, she was associated with fertility, love, and also with warfare, for she claimed half of those who fell in battle, bringing them to her hall Folkvanga. The other half went to Odin's Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain, where warriors feasted and prepared for their ultimate purpose. Freyja possessed a cloak of falcon feathers that allowed her to fly between worlds, and she wept tears of gold when separated from her wandering husband. She represented the Norse understanding that love and battle, creation and destruction, were not opposites, but intertwined aspects of existence. The Vanir, another family of deities, had once been at odds with the Aesir before a truce was reached and hostages exchanged. Freya herself came from the Vanir, along with her brother Freya and their father Njord. The Vanir were associated particularly with fertility, prosperity, and the bounty of land and sea. Their integration with the Aesir reflected the Norse understanding that different powers must work together to maintain the cosmos. And then there was Loki, perhaps the most enigmatic figure in Norse mythology. Neither fully god nor giant, though counted among the Aesir. Loki was a shapeshifter and a trickster whose cleverness sometimes saved the gods and sometimes caused them tremendous difficulty. He could change his form at will, becoming a salmon, a mare, a fly, or an old woman, as the situation demanded. His relationship with the other gods was complicated, marked by companionship, exasperation, and growing tension that would eventually play a crucial role in the mythology's ultimate narrative. The Norse cosmos was held together by these deities, but it was not static or eternal. The concept of word, often translated as fate, hung over all events. This was not quite the same as Greek fate, but rather a sense that actions created consequences that wove together into an inevitable pattern. 3 beings called the Norns sat beneath Yggdrasil beside the well of fate, weaving the threads of destiny for gods and humans alike. Even Odin, with all his wisdom, could not escape what the Norns wove. This acceptance of limitation, this acknowledgement that even gods face challenges they might not overcome, gave Norse mythology a particular character. It reflected the harsh environment of the North, where survival required both courage and the wisdom to accept what could not be changed. Yet it also emphasized the importance of reputation, of how one faced those challenges. A brave deed, a kept oath, a clever solution to an impossible problem. These things mattered deeply and would be remembered in the songs and stories that outlived any individual life. As we rest here in the branches of Yggdrasil, feeling the great tree sway gently in cosmic winds, we sense the vitality of this northern vision. The gods are not distant, but deeply engaged with the world. Not perfect, but striving. Not eternal, but making the most of their long twilight. And ahead of us, in the tales yet to come, we will see how these deities faced both daily challenges and the ultimate test that the Norse knew awaited all things. The Norse cosmos, with its 9 realms connected by the great world tree, was inhabited by gods who were themselves part of the endless cycle of time. These deities were not distant, abstract forces, but rather beings who embodied the spirit of the people who told their stories. They experienced joy and sorrow, wisdom and folly, triumph and setback. The tales of their adventures, preserved in poems and sagas, written down in medieval Iceland, reveal a worldview shaped by the fjords and mountains, the long winters and brief summers, the sea voyages and settled farms of Scandinavia. Among all the gods, Thor was perhaps the most beloved by common people. The thunder god was a protector, traveling constantly through the 9 realms to confront threats to cosmic order. His hammer, Mjolnir, forged by skilled dwarven craftsmen, always returned to his hand after being thrown and served as both weapon and sacred symbol. Stories of Thor often began with him waking to discover some new challenge or problem requiring his attention. In one tale, he discovered his hammer had been stolen while he slept, taken by a giant who demanded the goddess Freya as payment for its return. The gods devised a plan in which Thor himself disguised himself in bridal clothing to retrieve the hammer, a story that reveals Norse mythology's surprising humor alongside its epic grandeur. Thor's journeys to the realm of the giants provided some of mythology's most imaginative tales. In one famous story, Thor traveled with Loki and 2 human servants to the hall of a giant king named Utgarda. Loki. The giant king challenged them to various contests that seemed simple but proved impossible. Thor attempted to drain a drinking horn but barely lowered its level. He tried to lift a cat from the floor, but could only raise one paw. He wrestled with an old woman and was brought to his knees. Only later did the giant king reveal that these were illusions. The drinking horn was connected to the ocean itself, and Thor had caused the tides. The cat was actually the Midgard serpent encircling the world, and Thor had nearly lifted it free. The old woman was old age itself, which defeats all things. This story reveals how Norse mythology explored themes of perception, limitation, and the hidden nature of reality. Loki occupied a unique position in the Norse pantheon, not a god by birth, but a giant who became Odin's blood brother. Loki moved between categories and boundaries. Sometimes he helped the gods with his cleverness, devising solutions to seemingly impossible problems. Other times his schemes created difficulties that required still more ingenuity to resolve. His nature was fundamentally ambiguous, neither wholly helpful nor entirely harmful, embodying the unpredictable element in existence that cannot be controlled or fully understood. The Norse saw in Loki the representation of change itself, the force that disrupts stable patterns and makes transformation possible. One tale tells how Loki helped create treasures for the gods by wagering with dwarven craftsmen. The bet resulted in the creation of several wonderful objects, including Thor's hammer and Odin's spear Gungnir. Yet Loki interfered with the forging process, trying to win his wager through trickery rather than honest terms. The story reveals the Norse understanding that even from complicated motives and imperfect actions, valuable things could emerge. The world was not simple, and neither were the beings who inhabited it. The Norse tradition held a distinctive view of time and fate compared to many other mythological systems. The Norns, three figures who dwelt by the well at Yggdrasil's roots, wove the fate of gods and humans alike. Yet the concept of fate in Norse thought was not absolute predetermination. Rather, it represented the accumulated weight of past actions, creating the conditions of the present. Each deed carved runes into the tree of destiny, shaping what would come. This understanding gave weight to every choice, while acknowledging that outcomes could not always be foreseen or controlled. This worldview culminated in the Norse conception of Ragnarok, the great renewal. The myths foretold a time when tensions and conflicts would reach their ultimate expression. The wolf Fenrir would break his bonds. The Midgard serpent would rise from the ocean, and forces long held in check would be released. Many gods would fall, and the world would be consumed by fire and water. Yet this was not understood as mere ending. The Norse tales specified that the world would emerge again from the waters, green and renewed. Some gods would survive, and two human beings would repopulate the earth. The treasured values and stories would continue in new forms. This vision of Ragnarok reflected the environment that shaped Norse culture. In the far north, the people experienced dramatic seasonal changes. Winter's darkness gave way to spring's return. Volcanic Iceland knew both destruction and the fertile soil that follows. The sea could destroy and sustain. From this experience came a mythology that emphasized acceptance of change, the courage to face difficulty, and trust in renewal beyond endings that seemed final. The Norse myths celebrated not passive acceptance, but active engagement with life's challenges. The gods knew their fate, yet chose to act with honor and purpose. Odin pursued wisdom, knowing it came at a cost. Thor faced giants knowing more would always arise. The humans who heard these stories understood them as models for living well in an unpredictable world. Courage, loyalty, hospitality, and wisdom were the virtues these tales emphasized, qualities needed to maintain community in harsh circumstances. The afterlife in Norse mythology reflected different fates for different lives. Warriors who died bravely might be brought to Valhalla, Odin's hall, where they feasted and prepared for Ragnarok's final gathering. Yet other destinations existed as well, including Freya's hall Folkvanga and the realm of Hell for those who died of illness or age. The Norse conception was less about reward and punishment than about the continuation of one's essential nature beyond bodily life. These stories, preserved through Iceland's literary tradition, offer a window into how one culture understood existence. As we prepare to journey south and west to explore the Celtic traditions, we carry with us the Norse emphasis on courage, wisdom, and acceptance of life's essential nature. The cold winds of the north have shown us one way of facing the great mysteries, and now gentler breezes from other lands will offer their own insights into humanity's search for meaning and connection. As we journey westward from the harsh northern lands of the Norse peoples, we arrive at the misty shores and rolling green hills of the Celtic world, a realm where the boundary between what is seen and unseen was understood to be remarkably thin. The Celts, spread across much of ancient Europe, from Ireland and Britain to Gaul and beyond, developed a rich tapestry of mythological understanding that saw the world as layered with invisible depths, where magic and everyday life intertwined like the intricate knotwork patterns that would later adorn their manuscripts. The Celtic imagination conceived of reality as permeable, a place where mortals might step through a doorway or walk around a hillside and find themselves in the otherworld, a realm of eternal youth and plenty known by many names across Celtic lands. In Irish tradition, this was Tir na Nog, the land of the young, or sometimes Mag Mell, the plain of honey. These were not distant paradises requiring lengthy journeys after passing from life, but rather parallel dimensions existing alongside the mortal world, separated by veils that grew especially transparent at certain times and places. The mythology speaks of the Tuatha De Danann, the people of the goddess Danu, divine or semi-divine beings who were said to have ruled Ireland in ancient times. According to the stories preserved by generations of bards and storytellers, these remarkable people arrived in Ireland shrouded in mist, bringing with them 4 treasures: the Stone of Fall, that would cry out beneath the true king, the Spear of Lugh that ensured victory in battle, the Sword of Nuada, from which no one could escape, and the Cauldron of the Dagda that could feed any number without emptying. Each of these objects carried symbolic weight, representing sovereignty, protection, justice, and abundance. Among the Tuatha De Danann, certain figures shine particularly bright in the mythological memory. The Dagda, whose name means the good god, was portrayed not as morally good, but as good at everything, a figure of immense power and appetite who carried a magical club and commanded the seasons. Lugh, sometimes called Samil Darnach, or skilled in all arts, embodied the ideal of excellence across multiple domains, from craftsmanship to combat. Brigid, goddess of poetry, healing, and smithcraft, was so beloved that her veneration continued even as Christianity spread, transformed into a Christian saint while retaining much of her earlier character. The Celtic worldview recognized divinity not just in anthropomorphic deities, but woven throughout the natural landscape itself. Sacred wells bubbled with healing waters and wisdom. Ancient trees, particularly oaks, were revered as connection points between earth and sky. Rivers more carried their own spiritual essence, their names often preserved as goddess names: the Boyne, the Shannon, the Seine. The Celts understood that certain places held particular power. Thin places where the veil between worlds grew gossamer, fine. This connection to landscape shaped how the Celts approached their mythology. Every hill might be a shidi, a fairy mound housing entrances to the otherworld. The custom arose of leaving offerings at special places, acknowledging the presence of spirits and seeking their favor, or at least their tolerance. Water sources especially received tokens of respect, a practice archaeologists have confirmed through discoveries of valuable objects deliberately placed in wells, springs, and rivers across the Celtic world. The role of the bard held special significance in Celtic society. These were not mere entertainers, but highly trained professionals who spent decades learning the traditional stories, genealogies, and wisdom of their people. In Ireland, the Fíled were poets and seers combined, while in Wales the bardic tradition preserved ancient knowledge through carefully crafted verses. Without written records for much of their history, Celtic peoples entrusted their mythology to these living repositories of cultural memory, who could recite for days without repeating themselves. Transformation appears as a recurring theme throughout Celtic mythology, reflecting the culture's understanding of reality as fluid rather than fixed. The children of Lear were said to have been transformed into swans for 900 years, yet retained their human minds and voices. The goddess Sheridwen possessed a cauldron of inspiration and knowledge, and the tale of Taliesin involves multiple shapeshifts and rebirths. Warriors might have encounters with beings who shifted between human and animal form. This emphasis on transformation suggests a worldview that accepted change as fundamental to existence. The festival calendar of the Celts marked moments when the boundaries between worlds grew especially thin. Samhain, celebrated as summer's end, was understood as a time when spirits could move freely between realms. Beltane marked summer's beginning with fires and celebration. Imbolc heralded the first stirrings of spring, while Lugnasad celebrated the harvest. These festivals divided the year not by solar solstices and equinoxes, but by agricultural and pastoral cycles. The practical concerns of people whose survival depended on herds and harvests. Celtic mythology also preserved stories of great heroes whose adventures took them between worlds. Cu Chulainn, the Hound of Ulster, possessed supernatural strength and battle frenzy, yet his story emphasizes tragedy as much as triumph. Fionn mac Cumhaill, leader of the Fianna, gained wisdom by tasting the salmon of knowledge. Pwyll, Prince of Dyfed in Welsh tradition, exchanged places with the King of Annwn, the Welsh Otherworld, for a year and a day. These heroes operated in a world where the marvelous was woven into the fabric of everyday experience. The arrival of Christianity in Celtic lands created a unique mythological synthesis. Rather than entirely replacing earlier traditions, the new faith often absorbed and transformed them. Sacred wells became associated with saints. Brigid, the goddess, became Brigid the saint. Ancient festivals were given new Christian meanings while retaining their timing and much of their character. Irish monks, writing in the early medieval period, preserved many pre-Christian myths in manuscripts, creating one of the richest collections of ancient European mythology outside the classical world. As we allow these images to settle in our minds, the misty Celtic landscape with its sacred groves and hidden entrances to other worlds, we prepare to journey eastward once more toward the vast lands of China, where mythology took different forms yet addressed similar fundamental questions about the nature of existence and humanity's place within it. The Celtic vision of multiple intertwined realities and the sacredness present throughout the natural world offers its own answer to the eternal human desire to find meaning and connection in the cosmos we inhabit. As we leave behind the mist-shrouded landscapes of the Celtic world, we turn our gaze eastward across the vast expanse of Asia, toward a civilization whose mythological traditions stretch back into the depths of time. In the land we now call China, a different understanding of the cosmos took shape, one that would influence not only mythology, but philosophy, governance, and daily life for thousands of years. The Chinese approach to mythology differed from many traditions we have encountered. Rather than emphasizing dramatic conflicts between gods or cataclysmic battles for cosmic supremacy, Chinese myths often centered on themes of harmony, balance, and the proper ordering of the universe. This reflected a worldview in which stability and equilibrium were the highest ideals, where heaven and earth, humanity and nature existed in delicate interconnection. In the beginning, according to ancient Chinese tradition, there was only chaos, formless and undifferentiated. Within this primordial confusion existed an enormous egg, and within that egg slumbered Pangu, the first being. For 18,000 years, Pangu grew within this cosmic egg, until finally he awoke and stretched, breaking the shell apart. The lighter, purer elements rose upward to become the heavens, while the heavier, denser element sank downward to form the earth. But Pangu's work had only begun. Fearing that heaven and earth might collapse back together into chaos, he stood between them, his feet planted firmly on the ground and his hands pressing against the sky. Each day, Pangu grew 10 feet taller, and the distance between heaven and earth increased by the same measure. For another 18,000 years, Pangu stood as the pillar separating the realms, growing ever taller until the separation became permanent and stable. When Pangu finally completed his task, he was exhausted beyond measure. As he lay down for his final rest, his body transformed into the features of the natural world. His breath became the wind and clouds. His voice became thunder. His left eye became the sun, and his right eye the moon. His 4 limbs and 5 extremities became the 4 cardinal directions and the 5 sacred mountains. His blood flowed as rivers. His muscles formed the fields, and his hair became the stars in the heavens. Even his sweat turned into rain and dew, nourishing all things. In this way, the very first being gave himself completely to create the world we inhabit. Following this age of creation came the work of ordering and refining the world. The goddess Nua appears in numerous ancient texts as a being of great compassion and creativity. She is often depicted as having a human head and upper body, with the tail of a serpent or dragon. According to tradition, Nua looked upon the newly formed earth and felt it was incomplete. Though beautiful, it lacked conscious beings who could appreciate its wonders. Taking yellow clay from the riverbanks, Nua began to sculpt small figures, forming them carefully with her hands. When she breathed life into these clay figures, they became the first humans, dancing and celebrating their existence. Delighted by her creations, Nua continued her work. But molding each figure individually was slow and laborious. To quicken the process, she dipped a rope into the clay and swung it around so that drops flew off in all directions. Where each drop landed, another person sprang to life. Some stories gently suggest that the carefully handcrafted people became the nobles, while those formed from the scattered drops became common folk, though all were equally her children. The compassion of Nua became even more evident when disaster struck the world. According to ancient accounts, the pillar supporting the northwestern sky was damaged, causing a portion of the heavens to collapse. The earth tilted, waters flooded the land, and fires burned across the landscape. Humanity faced extinction. Nua could not bear to see her children suffer. So she gathered stones of 5 different colors from riverbeds and melted them down to patch the broken sky. She then killed a great turtle and used its 4 legs as new pillars to support the heavens, ensuring stability. Through her efforts, balance was restored, though even today people say the sun and moon still drift slightly westward because of that ancient tilt. The concept of balance pervades Chinese mythology in ways both subtle and profound. The principles of yin and yang, representing complementary forces that interact to form a greater whole, appear throughout creation stories and divine tales. Yin, associated with darkness, coolness, earth, and receptivity, combines with yang, associated with light, warmth, heaven, and activity. Neither force dominates permanently. Instead, they dance in eternal interplay, each containing the seed of the other, each necessary for the existence of the whole. This philosophy of balance extended to the relationship between heaven and earth, a connection maintained by exemplary rulers who held what was called the mandate of heaven. The mythological sage kings of ancient times embodied this connection. Figures like Fuxi, often paired with Nua as her brother or consort, was credited with teaching humanity essential skills such as fishing, trapping, and animal husbandry. He supposedly observed patterns in nature on the back of a dragon horse that emerged from the Yellow River, and from these observations created the 8 trigrams that would later form the basis of the I Ching, the Book of Changes. Another legendary emperor, Shennong, the divine farmer, taught agriculture and herbal medicine. Stories tell how he personally tasted hundreds of plants to determine which were nutritious and which were poisonous, sometimes becoming ill multiple times in a single day, but persisting in his research for the benefit of humanity. The Yellow Emperor, Huangdi, was credited with numerous innovations including the calendar, Chinese characters, and various technologies that allowed civilization to flourish. These sage rulers represented an ideal of leadership as service, wisdom, and connection to cosmic principles rather than mere power. They were not typically portrayed as all-powerful deities demanding worship, but as extraordinary beings who helped humanity achieve harmony with the natural order. Chinese mythology also celebrated the Eight Immortals, a group of legendary beings who achieved immortality through various paths and possessed diverse personalities and powers. Their stories, which became especially popular during later periods, illustrated that transcendence could be achieved through different means and by people from all walks of life. Among them were scholars, soldiers, women, men, the young, and the elderly. Each carried symbolic objects and had distinctive attributes, and together they often embarked on adventures that combined humor, wisdom, and magical intervention. Throughout Chinese mythological thought runs a thread of integration between the spiritual and the practical, between cosmic forces and earthly governance, between individual cultivation and social harmony. Unlike some traditions that sharply divided the mortal and divine realms, Chinese mythology saw them as points on a continuum, connected by shared principles of order and balance. The sacred mountains, the great rivers, the changing seasons, all reflected the same cosmic patterns that governed heaven. To live well meant understanding one's place within these patterns and acting in accordance with them. This integration of mythology with philosophy, governance, and daily life created a comprehensive worldview that shaped one of history's most enduring civilizations. As we prepare to journey onward to the islands of Japan, we carry with us this vision of cosmic harmony, where creation arose not from violence, but from sacrifice and transformation, where divine compassion repaired the broken sky, and where the greatest wisdom lay in understanding and maintaining the delicate balance that sustains all existence. From the harmonious balance of Chinese cosmic philosophy, we now travel eastward across the waters to the archipelago of Japan, where mountains rise steep from the sea and volcanic peaks touch the clouds. Here, in these islands of mist and waterfall, of cherry blossom and pine, a unique mythological tradition developed that saw the divine not as distant powers, but as intimate presences woven into every aspect of the natural world. The story of how these islands came to be begins in the high plain of heaven, Takamagahara, where celestial beings dwelled in the time before time. The earliest gods emerged from the void, generation after generation, until there came into being two deities who would shape the world below. Izanagi, whose name suggests invitation and presence, and Izanami, whose name carries meanings of invitation and beauty. These two stood upon the floating bridge of heaven and looked down upon the waters that covered everything below. The other celestial beings entrusted Izanagi and Izanami with a jeweled spear and instructed them to create something solid from the primordial ocean. Standing together on that bridge between heaven and the formless deep, they lowered the spear into the waters below and stirred. When they lifted the spear, drops of brine fell from its tip, and where each drop touched the surface, it solidified. These droplets accumulated and became the first island, Onagoro, the spontaneously congealed island. Descending from heaven, the two deities made their home there. From their union upon that first island, more land emerged, The islands of Japan took form one by one, each with its own character and spirit. They brought forth Awaji, then Shikoku, then Kyushu, and the other islands that would constitute the Japanese archipelago. After the land came other deities, each representing different aspects of the world. The gods of wind and trees, of mountains and rivers, of the sea and harbors. Everything that existed had its origin in this divine creative act. But this creation story carries within it a recognition of sorrow alongside wonder. When Izanami gave birth to the deity of fire, she was terribly wounded by the flames and departed to Yomi, the shadowy land of the dead. Overcome with grief, Izanagi journeyed to that dark realm to bring her back, much like similar tales told in other lands. He found her there in the darkness, but when light revealed her changed state, both recoiled. Izanami, transformed by death, could not return. Izanagi fled back to the world of light, and Izanami became the ruler of the underworld. Their separation marked the establishment of the boundary between life and death, between the realm of growth and the realm of stillness. When Izanagi returned to the world of the living, he purified himself in a river, and from this purification ritual, called Mythology, three of the most important deities in Japanese mythology came into being. When he washed his left eye, there emerged Amaterasu, the radiant sun goddess, who had become the most honored deity in the Shinto tradition. From his right eye came Tsukuyomi, the moon god who rules the night, and from his nose emerged Susanoo, the powerful and sometimes tempestuous deity associated with storms and the sea. Amaterasu received from her father the realm of heaven and the sun, and her light brought warmth and growth to the world below. She is remembered as a deity of nurturing and cultivation, watching over the rice fields that sustained Japanese civilization. Her connection to the imperial line would later make her central to Japanese identity, though the mythological stories themselves focus on her as a cosmic presence bringing order and illumination. The relationship between Amaterasu and her brother Susanoo forms one of the most significant narrative cycles in Japanese mythology. Susanoo, assigned to rule the oceans, possessed a wild and unpredictable nature, like the storms he embodied. On one occasion, his behavior became so disruptive that Amaterasu, affronted and distressed, withdrew into a heavenly cave and sealed the entrance with a massive boulder. With the sun goddess hidden away, darkness fell upon the world. Both heaven and earth were plunged into shadow. Plants withered, and disorder spread. The 8 million kami, the myriad divine spirits, gathered outside the cave to devise a way to coax Amaterasu back into the world. They placed a sacred mirror on a tree, hung jewels from the branches, and gathered roosters, whose crowing announced the dawn even in that perpetual night. Then Ame no Uzume, a goddess of joy and revelry, began to dance upon an overturned tub. Her performance was so spirited and entertaining that the assembled deities erupted in laughter. The sound of their merriment echoed across the heavens. Curious about what could cause such celebration in her absence, Amaterasu opened the cave entrance just slightly to peer out. The deities held up the mirror. and Amaterasu, seeing her own radiance reflected, emerged further. A strong deity blocked the cave entrance behind her, preventing her return to seclusion. Light flooded back into the world, and balance was restored. This story reveals something essential about Japanese mythological thinking. The solution to cosmic crisis came not through conquest or force, but through creativity, beauty, and the power of communal joy to draw forth what had withdrawn. The mirror, the jewels, and the sword that features in other stories would become the three sacred treasures, symbols of legitimacy and divine connection. Susanoo, after his banishment from heaven for his disruptions, descended to the land of Izumo on the Japanese mainland. There, his character took on new dimensions. When he encountered an elderly couple grieving because a terrible 8-headed serpent, Yamata no Orochi, had devoured 7 of their daughters and would soon claim the 8th, Susanoo transformed from chaos bringer to hero. He devised a plan, preparing 8 vats of strong sake. When the serpent came, each of its 8 heads drank from a vat until the creature fell into a stupor. Susanoo then dispatched the serpent, and from its tail, he discovered an extraordinary sword, which he presented to Amaterasu as a gesture of reconciliation. This mythology reveals the Japanese concept of kami, which differs from the notion of gods in many other traditions. Kami are not necessarily immortal beings of perfect power, residing far from human experience. Instead, they are sacred presences found throughout the world, in waterfalls and ancient trees, in mountains and unusual stones, in ancestors and forces of nature. The word kami suggests something that evokes awe and respect, something above the ordinary, yet intimately present. The mythology of Japan remains tied to specific places in the landscape. Particular shrines mark locations where certain deities are said to have acted or resided. The Grand Shrine of Ise, dedicated to Amaterasu, sits nestled in a forest, rebuilt every 20 years in a tradition that honors both permanence and renewal. Throughout Japan, thousands of shrines mark sacred sites where the boundary between the everyday and the numinous grows thin. Japanese myths also emphasize purity and purification, reflecting perhaps the island's abundant fresh water and the importance of cleanliness in a humid climate conducive to decay. The ritual purification that produced Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi, and Susanoo became a model for ongoing spiritual practice, washing away impurity, whether physical or spiritual, restores proper relationship with the kami and with the natural order. As we prepare to journey westward across the Pacific to the civilizations of Mesoamerica, we carry with us the Japanese vision of a world alive with sacred presence, where gods emerged from the very act of creating the islands themselves, where light can withdraw and return, and where the divine dwells not in distant perfection, but in the immediate, particular beauty of place. As we cross the vast Pacific Ocean and arrive at the shores of what would become known as the Americas, we encounter civilizations that developed mythological systems of breathtaking complexity and sophistication. The peoples of Mesoamerica, stretching from central Mexico through Central America, created cosmologies that intertwined mathematics, astronomy, agriculture, and divine narrative into unified visions of existence that rivaled any in the ancient world. The Maya and Aztec civilizations, along with their predecessors like the Olmec and contemporaries like the Zapotec, understood time itself as a sacred phenomenon. Unlike the linear progression we often imagine, these cultures viewed cosmic time as cyclical, moving through great epochs that rose and fell like the agricultural seasons they depended upon. The Maya, in particular, developed calendrical systems of remarkable precision, tracking both the solar year and ritual cycles with mathematical exactitude that would not be matched in Europe for centuries. According to the creation narratives preserved in texts like the Popol Vuh, the sacred book of the Quiché Maya, the gods attempted multiple times to create suitable inhabitants for the earth. In the first attempt, they fashioned creatures from mud, but these beings dissolved and could not speak properly to honor their creators. In a second attempt, wooden figures were carved, but these proved hollow and soulless, lacking true consciousness and gratitude. Finally, humanity was successfully created from maize dough, ground from the white and yellow corn that was the staple of Mesoamerican life. This origin story reveals something profound about how these cultures viewed themselves. Not as separate from nature, but as fundamentally composed of the same sacred substance that sustained them daily. The centrality of maize in Mesoamerican mythology cannot be overstated. This grain, which had been carefully cultivated from wild teosinte over thousands of years, was more than mere sustenance. It was the flesh of humanity itself, a divine gift that connected people directly to the cosmic order. The cycle of planting, growth, harvest, and renewal mirrored the cycles of the cosmos, and tending maize was therefore a sacred act that maintained the balance between earthly and celestial realms. Among the most fascinating deities of this region was the figure known to the Aztecs as Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. To the Maya, a similar deity was known as Kukulkan. This being represented a remarkable fusion of opposites: the earth-bound serpent and the sky-dwelling bird united in a single form. Quetzalcoatl was associated with wind, learning, creativity, and the morning star we know as Venus. Various traditions credited this deity with giving humanity essential gifts of civilization, including the calendar and knowledge of agriculture. One particularly beautiful myth tells of Quetzalcoatl descending to the underworld realm of Mictlan to retrieve the bones of previous human generations. After successfully bringing these bones back to the surface world, they were ground into powder and mixed with the deity's own essence to create the current age of humanity. This story, like the maize creation narrative, emphasizes continuity and connection. The present generation literally containing elements of all who came before. The Aztec cosmos was organized both spatially and temporally with geometric precision. The universe consisted of horizontal layers, the Earth itself, multiple celestial levels above, and layers of the underworld below. It was also divided into 4 quadrants radiating from the center, each associated with specific colors, deities, and qualities. This spatial organization reflected a deep desire to create order from the overwhelming complexity of existence. Temporally, the Aztecs understood that the current world was actually the fifth in a series of cosmic ages called suns. Each previous sun had been destroyed by a different catastrophe: jaguars, wind, fiery rain, and flood. The present age, called the fifth sun, was sustained by the motion of the sun across the sky, a journey that required constant nourishment. This belief led to elaborate ritual practices designed to maintain cosmic balance and ensure the sun's continued journey, preventing the collapse into chaos that had ended previous ages. The goddess Coatlicue, whose name means she of the serpent skirt, embodied the dual nature of existence itself. She was simultaneously a creative and destructive force, wearing a necklace of hearts and hands, with serpents forming her clothing. Far from being frightening, this imagery represented a sophisticated understanding that creation and dissolution are inseparable aspects of a single process. Life feeds on life. The old must give way for the new. Death is the necessary prelude to rebirth. Another important deity was Tlaloc, the rain god, whose tears brought the precious water that allowed maize and other crops to flourish. In the mountainous terrain of central Mexico, where rainfall patterns determined survival, Tlaloc held tremendous significance. This deity resided in a paradise called Tlalocan, imagined as an eternally verdant garden where those who experienced particular forms of passing, such as by lightning or drowning, would dwell in abundance. The Maya, meanwhile, developed an elaborate understanding of the underworld they called Xibalba, described in detail in the Popol Vuh. This realm was not simply a place of ending, but rather a challenging domain through which souls journeyed, facing tests and trials. The hero twins, Hunahpu and Xbalanque, famously descended into Xibalba and outwitted its lords through cleverness and skill at the ballgame that was sacred throughout Mesoamerica. Their eventual transformation into the sun and moon demonstrated that even the celestial bodies had to undergo trials and transformations. The Mesoamerican ballgame itself carried deep mythological significance. Played on eye-shaped courts found at sites throughout the region, the game was more than sport. It was a ritual reenactment of cosmic struggles, with the ball representing the sun or moon moving between the realms of light and darkness. The largest ball court at Chichen Itza stretches over 550 feet in length, its stone rings still visible high on the walls, where players would attempt to pass a heavy rubber ball using only their hips, chest, and knees. What distinguished Mesoamerican mythology was its integration with precise observational astronomy. The Maya tracked the movements of Venus with such accuracy that their calculations over centuries differ from modern astronomical measurements by only minutes. They recognized that Venus cycles through periods of visibility and invisibility, appearing first as the morning star, then vanishing, then reappearing as the evening star. These movements were understood as the journeys of deities through different realms, and temples were oriented to mark significant positions of Venus, the sun during solstices and equinoxes, and other celestial events. The stepped pyramids that still rise above the jungle canopy and urban landscapes served as artificial mountains, connecting the earthly plane with the celestial realm. They were carefully designed according to astronomical alignments, so that on specific days, light and shadow would create spectacular effects, such as the famous serpent descending the stairs at Kukulkan's pyramid in Chichen Itza during the equinoxes. As we prepare to journey next to the diverse continent of Africa, we carry with us this understanding of how Mesoamerican peoples wove together observation, agriculture, mathematics, and narrative into comprehensive systems of meaning. Their myths were not simple stories, but sophisticated frameworks for understanding cycles within cycles, the day and night, the agricultural year, the movements of celestial bodies, and the vast cosmic ages. In these traditions, we witness humanity's remarkable capacity to find pattern and purpose in the cosmos, creating meaning that sustained complex civilizations for millennia. As we journey southward from the Americas and turn our attention eastward across the Atlantic, we arrive at the vast and varied continent of Africa, a landscape as diverse in its mythological traditions as in its geography. Here, from the windswept Sahara to the lush river valleys, from coastal settlements to highland kingdoms, countless cultures developed rich storytelling traditions that passed wisdom from generation to generation through the spoken word. The oral nature of African mythology meant that stories remained alive and adaptable, changing slightly with each telling, yet preserving essential truths about the world and human nature. These were not simply tales for entertainment, though they certainly entertained. They served as education, as moral guidance, as historical record, and as a connection to the ancestors and the divine forces that shaped existence. In the beginning, according to the Yoruba people of what is now Nigeria and Benin, there existed only sky and water and marsh. The supreme deity Olodumare sent the Orisha Obatala down from the heavens with a chain, carrying a snail shell filled with sand, a white hen, a black cat, and a palm nut. When Obatala reached the end of the chain, he poured the sand onto the waters below and set the hen upon it. The hen began to scratch and scatter the sand, spreading it in all directions to form the first dry land. This place became known as Eli If, considered the sacred city where the world began. Obatala planted the palm nut, which grew into a tree with 16 branches, representing the 16 original kingdoms of the Yoruba people. This creation story, like so many across the continent, emphasizes the connection between divine action and earthly geography, making every landscape sacred, every place part of a larger cosmic story. The Yoruba pantheon includes hundreds of orishas, each with distinct personalities and domains, from Shango, the deity of thunder and justice, to Oshun, the deity of rivers, beauty, and love. These divine figures were not distant and unreachable, but actively present in the world, accessible through ritual, respect, and understanding. Moving westward across the continent, we encounter Anansi, the spider trickster of Akan tradition from Ghana. Anansi stories spread throughout West Africa, and later through the terrible dispersal of enslaved peoples to the Caribbean and Americas, where the spider's cleverness continued to teach and inspire. Anansi is small and seemingly powerless, yet through wit and cunning, he outwits stronger creatures and even negotiates with the sky deity Nyam himself. In one well-known tale, Anansi seeks to own all the stories of the world. Naame agrees, but only if Anansi can bring him 4 impossible things: a python, a leopard, a swarm of hornets, and a fairy whom no one had ever captured. Through clever tricks rather than force, Anansi accomplishes each task, proving that intelligence and creativity matter more than size or strength. These trickster tales served multiple purposes in African communities. They entertained during evening gatherings, certainly, but they also taught children to think creatively, to question assumptions, and to recognize that the powerful are not always right. The trickster could be both hero and troublemaker, sometimes helping humanity, sometimes causing chaos for his own amusement. This complexity reflected the understanding that the world itself is complex, not easily divided into simple categories. In the highlands of East Africa, the Maasai people tell of Enkai, the deity of sky and rain, who created the earth and established the connection between heaven and ground through a sacred fig tree. Enkai entrusted cattle to the Maasai people, lowering the first livestock from the sky on a leather rope, establishing the deep relationship between the Maasai and their herds that continues today. This myth explains not just the origin of cattle, but the entire way of life built around pastoralism, making daily existence an echo of that first divine gift. Among the San people of southern Africa, some of the continent's oldest inhabitants, stories tell of a time when animals were people, when the mantis was a creator figure who brought life and sometimes mischief to the world. These ancient narratives, preserved through rock art and oral tradition, spanning thousands of years, speak of transformation and the thin boundary between human and animal, reflecting the deep connection between hunter-gatherer communities and the natural world they inhabited. The Dogon people of Mali possess a complex cosmology involving Amma, the creator deity, and the Nomo, ancestral spirits associated with water and wisdom. According to Dogon tradition, Amma created the earth and then the first as living beings, and the Nomo brought knowledge and order to humanity. The Dogon's intricate understanding of celestial movements and cycles became encoded in their mythology, their villages laid out to mirror cosmic patterns, every architectural decision reflecting the structure of the universe itself. In the Congo Basin, the Kuba people tell of Mbombo, also called Bumba, the giant who in the beginning existed alone in darkness, surrounded by primordial waters. Mbombo felt a terrible pain in his stomach, and from this discomfort he vomited forth the sun, moon, and stars. The heat from the sun caused the waters to recede, revealing dry land. Then Mbombo vomited again, bringing forth 9 living creatures, including the leopard, the eagle, the crocodile, and the gobu, a mythical creature. From these 9 beings came all other animals. Finally, Mbombo created humanity. This creation, through emanation from the divine body itself, emphasizes the intimate connection between creator and creation. The diversity of African mythologies reflects the continent's vast size and the independence with which different communities developed their worldviews. Yet certain themes recur across many traditions. The importance of water as a life source and primordial element, the role of animals as teachers and messengers, the value of cleverness and adaptability, and the presence of the divine in everyday life rather than separated in distant heavens. African myths also frequently emphasize the role of mediators between human and divine realms. In many traditions, ancestors play this role, remaining active presences who guide, protect, and sometimes admonish their living descendants. This created a sense of continuity across generations, where the past remained present, where wisdom accumulated rather than disappeared, where each person existed as a link in an unbroken chain stretching back to the first days of creation. The oral nature of these traditions meant that storytellers, griots in West African tradition, held positions of great respect and responsibility. These keepers of memory preserved not just entertaining tales, but genealogies, histories, and the accumulated knowledge of their people. A skilled griot could recite the lineages of families back through dozens of generations, could tell you the deeds of ancient heroes, could explain the proper relationship between people and the divine forces that shaped their world. As we prepare to journey across the vast Pacific, we carry with us the understanding that African mythologies, in all their diversity, share a common recognition of the power of stories to bind communities together, to pass wisdom across time, and to explain humanity's place in the cosmos. These traditions remind us that mythology flourishes wherever people gather to make sense of existence, that each culture's stories are both unique and part of humanity's shared heritage of wonder and meaning. We leave the vast African continent and turn our eyes toward the greatest ocean on Earth, where scattered across millions of square miles of blue water lie thousands of islands, each with its own stories, yet all connected by voyagers who read the stars, currents and waves as others might read books. The peoples of the Pacific Ocean created mythologies as vast as the waters they traversed, stories that carried not just meaning, but survival itself, woven into every tale of gods and heroes. Imagine standing on a beach at night in ancient Polynesia, watching an elder trace patterns in the sand by firelight, showing the young ones how the stars move across the sky, how the swells speak of distant lands, how the myths of their ancestors contain the knowledge needed to cross thousands of miles of open ocean. These were not merely stories told for entertainment, though they certainly entertained. They were repositories of navigation techniques, weather prediction, and the collective wisdom of generations of seafarers who pushed further into the unknown than perhaps any other ancient peoples. The creation stories of these ocean cultures often began with separation, with the primal division that made space for life. In many Polynesian traditions, the Sky Father Ranginui and the Earth Mother Papatuanuku lay in tight embrace, locked together in darkness. Their children, the gods, existed in the cramped space between them, knowing neither light nor room to move. After long ages in this confined darkness, the children debated what to do. Should they remain in the darkness of their parents' embrace, or should they separate sky from earth and bring light into the world? Tamatawenga, the fierce god of war and humanity, proposed destroying their parents. But Tanemahuta, god of forests and birds, suggested instead that they gently push their parents apart. And so Tani placed his shoulders against his Mother Earth and his feet against his Father Sky, and slowly, carefully, with tremendous effort, he pushed them apart. Ranganui rose higher and higher, becoming the sky dome we know, while Papatuanuku remained below as the earth. Light flooded into the space between them, and the world as we know it came into being. To this day, the rain that falls from the sky represents Ranganui's tears for his separated beloved, while the morning mist rising from the earth shows Papatuanuku's sighs of longing. This beautiful story of necessary separation, of the birth of the world through both loss and creation, resonated across Polynesian cultures from Hawaii to New Zealand, though each island group added its own particular details and emphases. The myth speaks to universal human experiences of growth requiring separation, of light emerging from darkness, of the bittersweet nature of change. Among the most beloved figures in Pacific mythology stands Maui, the trickster hero whose cleverness benefited humanity time and again. Maui appears in stories throughout Polynesia, and while details vary from island to island, certain adventures remain remarkably consistent across thousands of miles of ocean. Often described as the youngest of brothers, sometimes of divine parentage, and sometimes not, Maui possessed both magical powers and quick wits that he used to transform the world. In one widely told story, Maui noticed that the sun raced across the sky far too quickly, giving people insufficient daylight to complete their work, to dry their cloth, to grow their crops properly. His mother complained that she could not finish beating bark into cloth before darkness fell. Maui decided to slow the sun's journey across the heavens. He obtained strong ropes, traveled to the place where the sun rose, and when the sun emerged, Maui lassoed its rays. He held the sun fast and would not release it until it promised to move more slowly across the sky, giving humanity longer days and adequate time for their labors. Another tale tells how Maui went fishing with his brothers. They refused to give him bait, so he struck his own nose and used his blood on the hook. When he cast his line into the deep, his hook caught not fish, but the very ocean floor. Maui pulled and pulled, chanting powerful incantations, and gradually he hauled up land from beneath the waves. The islands themselves, according to this tradition, were fished up by Maui's efforts. In the Maori tradition of New Zealand, the North Island is called Te Ika a Maui, the fish of Maui, while his canoe became the South Island. Maui's most ambitious adventure, told throughout the Pacific, was his attempt to gain immortality for humanity. He learned that to defeat death itself, he would need to pass through the body of Hinenui Tepo, the goddess of death and the underworld. Maui instructed the birds who accompanied him to remain absolutely silent while he attempted this feat, for any sound would wake the goddess and doom his quest. The hero began his passage, but one bird, seeing the absurd sight of Maui's legs protruding as he worked his way through, could not contain its laughter. The bird's chirp woke Hinenui Tepo, who crushed Maui, and thus humanity remained mortal. This story explains why death exists, but also celebrates the audacious courage to challenge even death itself. The navigation knowledge embedded in Pacific mythologies remains astounding to this day. Stories contain detailed information about star paths, the way clouds form differently over islands versus empty ocean, how certain seabirds fly out to feed and return to land, the patterns of ocean swells that persist long after storms and indicate the presence of distant landmasses. A trained navigator could read the reflections of waves bouncing off unseen islands, could sense the subtle shifts in water temperature and color that indicated currents and depths. The Hawaiian tradition speaks of the goddess Hina and her connection to the moon, tracking its phases and their relationship to tides and fishing. The story of the volcano goddess Pele, who traveled from island to island seeking a home for her fires, actually traces a geologically accurate path along the Hawaiian island chain, from the older northwestern islands to the younger southeastern ones, where volcanic activity continues today on the Big Island. In Micronesian mythology, the culture hero Alulue sailed between islands, establishing customs and teaching people essential knowledge. The navigation school on Werieng in the Caroline Islands taught complex mental star compasses with 32 directional points, knowledge passed down through chants and stories that disguised practical sailing information within mythological frameworks. The concept of mana, a spiritual power or life force that could reside in people, objects, or places, permeated Pacific belief systems. Great chiefs possessed mana, certain locations held mana, and the proper observance of customs and respect maintained the flow of mana that ensured prosperity and success. This idea connected the spiritual and practical realms, making mythology an active force in daily decision-making and social organization. These ocean peoples understood themselves as part of vast family networks stretching across the Pacific, their genealogies traced back through ancestors to the gods themselves, to Rangi and Papa, to Tane and Tangaroa, the god of the ocean. To know your mythology was to know your place in an enormous family tree that connected you to every other person, to the land, to the sea, and to the stars that guided your voyages. As we prepare to step back and look at the common threads running through all these mythological traditions from around the world, we carry with us the particular gift of the Pacific peoples, their demonstration that mythology could be both spiritually profound and intensely practical, that stories could simultaneously explain cosmic origins and teach the skills needed to survive and thrive in challenging environments, that looking up at the night sky could connect you to both your gods and your destination. As we have traveled through the mythologies of peoples across the world, from the fertile river valleys of Mesopotamia to the vast expanses of the Pacific Ocean, a remarkable phenomenon begins to reveal itself. Like tributaries flowing toward the same great sea, the stories told by cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years often arrive at strikingly similar destinations. These common threads woven through humanity's mythological tapestry suggest something profound about our shared nature and the universal questions that have always occupied our minds. Consider the flood. In ancient Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh tells of Utnapishtim, warned by the god Ea to build a great boat before waters cover the earth. In the Hebrew tradition, Noah receives similar divine instruction. The Greeks spoke of Deucalion and Pyrrha, sole survivors who repopulated the earth by throwing stones that became people. Hindu texts describe Manu, guided by a fish who warns him of the coming deluge. Chinese mythology preserves the story of Gun Yu and the great flood that required generations to control. Across the Pacific, Hawaiian traditions speak of a time when angry waters rose to consume the land. The Inca told of a flood that destroyed the world before this one. From the Cheyenne of North America to the Maasai of East Africa, flood narratives appear with remarkable consistency. These parallel stories need not all describe the same historical event. Rather, they speak to a shared human experience of witnessing nature's overwhelming power, of understanding how quickly the world we know can be transformed. Communities living near rivers and coasts have always known floods, and the mythological imagination naturally extended these experiences to cosmic proportions. The flood story becomes a way of speaking about renewal, about divine judgment or natural cleansing, about the precious fragility of civilization, and the need to preserve knowledge and life itself. Another pattern emerges in the dying and rising deity, a figure who descends into darkness or death and returns transformed. We have met Osiris, dismembered and scattered, then reassembled and reborn as Lord of the afterlife. The Sumerian Inanna descended to the underworld and returned. Greek mythology gave us Persephone, whose annual journey below ground and return explained the seasons. Norse Balder would return after Ragnarok. Across Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl descended to the underworld to gather the bones of previous humanity. These figures often connected to agricultural cycles, embodying the mystery of the seed that must be buried to sprout, the apparent death that precedes new life. They transformed humanity's most fundamental anxiety about mortality into hope, suggesting that endings might not be final. The quest for immortality surfaces repeatedly across cultures, revealing a universal wrestling with human limitation. Gilgamesh, devastated by his friend's death, journeys to find Utnapishtim and learn the secret of eternal life, only to have the plant of youth stolen by a serpent. Chinese mythology is rich with immortality seekers, from the 8 immortals to emperors who commissioned elaborate elixirs. The Greek heroes often sought some form of transcendence, whether Heracles achieving apotheosis or Odysseus refusing Calypso's offer of immortal life to remain human and return home. Hindu and Buddhist traditions reframed immortality not as endless individual existence, but as liberation from the cycle of rebirth. These stories collectively explore the question of what life means when bounded by time, and whether accepting mortality might itself be a form of wisdom. Creation from primordial chaos or waters appears with such frequency that it seems to reflect something fundamental about human perception. The Mesopotamian Tiamat, the Egyptian Nun, the Greek Chaos, the Norse Ginnungagap, the Chinese Hundan, the Polynesian Tekor, all describe a state before order, before distinction, before the world we know. From this formless potential, divine forces or primordial beings establish separation. Light from dark, sky from earth, land from sea. The creative act becomes one of making distinctions, establishing boundaries, bringing order from disorder. Perhaps these myths reflect the infant's cognitive development, learning to distinguish self from world, or humanity's own journey from undifferentiated awareness to complex understanding. The cosmic tree, or world axis, connects heaven and earth in numerous traditions. Yggdrasil stands at the center of Norse cosmology, its branches reaching to all realms. Hindu and Buddhist traditions speak of the axis mundi, the cosmic mountain or tree connecting worlds. Mesoamerican peoples saw the ceiba tree as sacred connector. Siberian shamanic traditions recognized the world tree as the path between realms. This vertical connection appears even in Greek mythology's Mount Olympus or the Egyptian Ben stone. The image seems to answer a deep need to understand our place in a layered cosmos, neither purely earthly nor heavenly, but connected to both. Trickster figures appear in nearly every tradition, neither fully good nor evil, but disruptive, clever, and transformative. Loki of Norse myth, Anansi of West Africa, Coyote of Native American traditions, Maui of Polynesia, the monkey Sun Wukong in Chinese tales, Hermes in his more mischievous moments. These figures break rules, overturn expectations, and through their chaos often bring gifts or knowledge to humanity. They remind us that civilization requires not just order, but also the flexibility to adapt, the intelligence to solve problems unconventionally, and perhaps the humor to recognize that the cosmic drama need not always be solemn. The separation of earth and sky appears as a foundational event in many cosmologies. The Egyptian god Shu lifting Nut away from Geb. The Maori story of Rangi and Papa, pushed apart by their children. The Greek Uranus separated from Gaia. Chinese Pangu, growing to push apart heaven and earth. All describe how the world gained the space necessary for life to flourish. This theme speaks to the human recognition that life requires separation, distinction, the space between things where movement and change become possible. Scholar Joseph Campbell dedicated his career to identifying what he called the monomyth, the hero's journey that appears across cultures. While each tradition adds unique elements, the basic pattern recurs. A hero receives a call to adventure, crosses into an unknown realm, faces trials, gains some boon or knowledge, and returns transformed to benefit their community. We can trace this pattern in Gilgamesh, in Odysseus, in the Buddha's enlightenment journey, in the vision quests of Native American traditions, in the descent and return of shamanic journeys worldwide. This structure seems to map not just adventure stories, but the universal human experience of growth through challenge. What these common threads reveal is both humbling and elevating. They show that despite vast differences in environment, language, and culture, human beings everywhere have grappled with the same essential questions. Where did we come from? Why do we suffer and die? How should we live? What forces shape our world? The answers vary in their details, colored by local landscapes and historical experiences, yet they often arrive at similar narrative structures and symbols. These patterns suggest that mythology arises not merely from external observation, but from something within human consciousness itself, from the architecture of how we think and feel and make meaning. The psychologist Carl Jung proposed that certain symbols and story patterns emerge from what he called the collective unconscious, inherited structures of human understanding, deeper than individual experience. Whether or not we accept such theories, the evidence of convergent mythological evolution remains striking. As we prepare to consider mythology's continuing relevance, these common threads remind us that the ancient storytellers were engaged in the same fundamental human project that continues today, making sense of existence, finding meaning in mystery, connecting individual experience to something larger and more enduring than ourselves. As we draw near the end of our journey through the world's mythologies, we find ourselves standing not at a conclusion, but at a threshold. The ancient stories we have encountered, born in firelight and carried across countless generations, have not faded into mere historical curiosities. Instead, they continue to breathe and move through our modern world in ways both obvious and subtle, shaping how we understand ourselves and the universe we inhabit. Walk through any art museum, and you will find the gods still present. Botticelli's Venus rises from her shell, as eternal as when the ancient Greeks first imagined Aphrodite emerging from sea foam. Countless painters have depicted the judgment of Paris, the labors of Heracles, the transformation of Daphne into Laurel. These images remain compelling, not because they are quaint relics, but because they capture something essential about desire, struggle, and change that speaks across the centuries. In literature, the presence of myth becomes even more apparent. James Joyce structured his novel Ulysses around the wanderings of Odysseus, transforming ancient Mediterranean journeys into a single day in Dublin. Madeline Miller has brought the Trojan Cycle to new generations of readers through fresh retellings. Neil Gaiman has woven Norse and other mythologies into contemporary fantasy, allowing ancient gods to walk modern streets. The patterns remain recognizable because the fundamental questions these stories address have not changed. We still wonder about our purpose, our relationship to forces greater than ourselves, and how to live meaningful lives in the face of uncertainty. The influence extends into realms that might seem far removed from ancient storytelling. When Carl Jung developed his theories of the collective unconscious and archetypes, he drew heavily on mythological patterns. He recognized in these ancient stories recurring symbols and character types that seem to emerge independently across cultures. The wise old man, the great mother, the trickster, the hero's journey. Whether or not one accepts Jung's specific theories, his work demonstrated how mythology provides a vocabulary for discussing universal aspects of human psychology and development. Joseph Campbell further explored these patterns in his examination of the hero's journey, identifying stages that appear in myths worldwide. The call to adventure, the crossing of thresholds, the meeting with mentors, trials and transformations, and the return home changed. This framework has consciously influenced modern storytelling, particularly in film. George Lucas openly acknowledged Campbell's influence on Star Wars, crafting a space opera that follows ancient mythological patterns. The enduring popularity of superhero stories likewise draws on the archetypal appeal of figures who mediate between ordinary and extraordinary realms, much like the demigods and culture heroes of antiquity. In our daily language, Mythology remains embedded in ways we scarcely notice. We speak of someone's Achilles heel, of a Herculean task, of a Pandora's box. We name our planets after Roman gods, our days of the week after Norse deities. Companies adopt names like Nike and Amazon, invoking ancient power and meaning. These are not mere decorative flourishes, but evidence of how deeply these stories have woven themselves into the fabric of how we communicate and think. The relevance of mythology extends beyond culture and psychology into how we understand our place in the natural world. As modern society grapples with environmental challenges, some have found renewed meaning in mythological traditions that emphasize the sacredness of nature. The Greek concept of sacred groves, the Japanese understanding of kami present in mountains and rivers, the Celtic reverence for particular landscapes. These perspectives offer alternatives to viewing nature solely as resource. They remind us that humans have not always seen themselves as separate from or superior to the natural world, but as participants in a larger living system. Even in our age of science and technology, we continue to create new myths. The stories we tell about artificial intelligence, space exploration, and human potential often follow mythological patterns. We imagine future worlds and technological transformations using the same narrative structures that ancient peoples used to imagine the deeds of gods and heroes. Science fiction and fantasy genres explicitly draw on mythological themes, creating new cosmologies while echoing ancient ones. The questions remain constant even as the settings change. What does it mean to be human? How should we relate to power? What responsibilities come with knowledge? The study of mythology also continues in academic settings, evolving as scholars apply new approaches and perspectives. Comparative mythology examines similarities across cultures, while others focus deeply on specific traditions, uncovering layers of meaning that might otherwise be lost. Indigenous communities around the world are reclaiming and preserving their mythological heritage, asserting the continued relevance of their ancestral stories in the face of cultural pressure. These efforts remind us that mythology is not merely a subject for scholars, but a living heritage for communities maintaining connections to ancient wisdom. Perhaps most importantly, mythology continues to serve the functions it has always served. It helps us process life's transitions and mysteries. The stories of journeys to underworlds and returns to light resonate with those experiencing grief and renewal. Tales of cosmic battles between order and chaos reflect our own struggles to find meaning in turbulent times. The presence of trickster figures reminds us that transformation often comes through unexpected means, that cleverness and adaptability have their place alongside strength and courage. As we conclude this exploration of world mythology, we might reflect on what these stories collectively represent. They are humanity's first poetry, our earliest attempts to create meaning in a vast and sometimes bewildering universe. They preserve the wonder our ancestors felt before the world, their awe at the sun's daily journey, the mystery of seasonal renewal, the power of storms, and the generosity of harvest. They encode practical wisdom about survival and social cooperation. They provide frameworks for understanding birth and growth, love and loss, courage and wisdom. The myths we have encountered are gifts from our ancestors, carefully preserved and passed down through countless retellings. They connect us to the humans who first told these stories, who looked at the same moon and stars we see, who felt the same hopes and fears that move through human hearts in every age. In learning these stories, we participate in one of humanity's oldest and most profound activities, the creation of meaning through narrative. As you drift towards sleep tonight, you carry with you the echoes of countless voices across time, all seeking to understand the mystery and beauty of existence. The gods and heroes, the creators and tricksters, the wise guides and brave questioners. They remain with us, not as literal truths, but as profound expressions of what it means to be human, to question, to imagine, to wonder, and to dream. As we bring to a close our journey through the timeless myths and sacred stories that have shaped human imagination across the ages, we hope these ancient tales of creation, gods, and heroes have gently carried you through the evening. Thank you for joining us on this peaceful exploration of humanity's earliest wisdom. If these calm adventures have brought you comfort, we'd love to have you with us again. Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. And now, as the night deepens and your mind settles, we wish you the sweetest of dreams. Good night, fellow dreamer, and may your sleep be restful and your dreams be kind.